Chapter 2033. A while later, Earth Chief, Nyetian, and Cher arrived at a remote location. Earth Chief scanned the surroundings and confirmed that there was no one else around. He smiled faintly and said, "There's no one else here, so this is a good place to talk." Nyetian didn't beat around the bush and said, "Lord Earth Chief, what do you want? Just say it." "Okay." Earth Chieftain nodded and said, "Nyetian, I bet you're wondering why the Crown Princess's memories were suddenly sealed. This matter is very complicated, and it is a secret of our ancient Ming race, so I cannot tell you. What I can tell you is that the princess memories being sealed is something we do not wish to see. The reason why I brought Her Highness here is to look for you. Because only you can awaken Her Highness the princess's sealed memories." With these words, Earth Chief fixed his gaze on Nyetian, his eyes flickering, making him look somewhat strange. "I'm the only one who can restore Shwe-Er's memories," Nyetian muttered. Then, he turned to Shwe and asked, "Why?" Earth Chief laughed bitterly, "Because you have the tear of an empress in your body. I don't think you know what the tear of the princess is. Am I right?" Nyetian couldn't help but become nervous when he heard Earth Chief mention the tear of the princess. He said, "I really don't know what the tear of the princess is, but I do know that it is something Cher left for me, so I will definitely treasure it. It is absolutely impossible for you to take back the tear of the princess. Don't be nervous." Earth Chief couldn't help but smile when he sensed Nyetian's hostility. He said, "The tear of the princess was indeed given to you by Her Highness, so it is yours. I can promise you right now that the inescapable net will no longer try to steal the tear of the princess from you." "Promise?" Nyetian chuckled. "Lian Jiufeng is very interested in the tear of the princess. He's willing to kill me for it. His Highness was a bit extreme in his actions, please forgive him. However, he is no longer a problem. Even if the tear of the princess is extremely important to him, he will no longer have any designs on the tear of the princess," Earth Chief said with a faint smile. Nyetian couldn't help but be surprised when Earth Chief called Lian Jiufeng Your Highness. Even now, he had no idea what the relationship between Lian Jiufeng, Cher, and the Underworld Emperor was. Cher was called the princess, and Lian Jiufeng was called the prince. From the way they addressed each other, it seemed like they were brother and sister. However, Cher and Lian Jiufeng were polar opposites. One was pure and holy, and the other evil and vicious. Could Cher and Lian Jiufeng be the children of the Underworld Emperor? A strange thought popped into Nyetian's mind, but he immediately rejected it. If Cher and Lian Jiufeng's relationship with the Underworld Emperor was this simple, Fat Cat wouldn't have been so secretive about it. The Underworld Emperor and the ancient Ming race. This was a mystery that only grew messier the more he thought about it. Nyetian decided to stop thinking about it. Right now, his greatest priority was to recover Cher's memories. After calming down, Nyetian turned to Earth Chieftain and asked, "Lord Earth Chieftain, are you saying that the princess's tear can help Snow recover her memories?" Earth Chief smiled and said, "The tear of the princess is one of the conditions for the princess to recover her memories, but it's far from enough. If you want Her Highness to recover her memory completely, you need to fulfill other conditions." "Recover her memories completely? What does this mean?" Nyetian noticed Earth Chief's words and couldn't help but focus his gaze as he asked. "Completely recovering her memories means that Her Highness will recover all of her memories, including the time she spent with you, as well as the memories of 3 lifetimes deep within her mind." Earth Chief didn't hide anything, and instead explained everything truthfully. The memories of 3 lives. Nyetian's eyes flickered. He recalled that the Heavenly Gift and Earthly Chief had once tried to use the 3 lives samsara disc to help Shwe-Er recover her memories. Unfortunately, the 3 lives samsara disc had been accidentally activated by Nyetian, so Shwe-Er's memories had not been restored. "Yes, the memories of 3 lives." Earth Chief nodded with a smile. He looked at Nye Tian with an extremely strange gaze and said, "The princess will return to herself sooner or later. You know this, don't you?" Nye Tian frowned. He thought for a moment and said, "You don't need to provoke me. Since I've already agreed to the deal, I will help Cher recover her memories no matter what." Nye Tian knew that Cher's identity was not simple. He had once worried that Cher wouldn't recognize him after recovering her memories of 3 lives. He was worried that he would lose Cher because of this. However, he was no longer worried. He understood that Cher would definitely return to her complete self. Once Cher recovered her memories of 3 lives, he would accept whatever choice Cher made. "Very well." Earth Chief smiled and continued, "Since you've agreed, I won't waste any more time. If you want to help the princess recover her memories, you need to take her somewhere other than the tier of the princess." "What place?" Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. He knew that the place Earth Chief was talking about must be an unusual place. Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss. Earth Chief's expression changed slightly as he uttered a name. Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss? Nye Tian was startled. Just from the name, he could guess that it was an extremely dangerous place. However, he had never heard of this place before. He couldn't help but ask, "What is this place?" "A place that has long been forgotten by the world." Earth Chief's eyes trembled slightly as if he had thought of something. He paused for a moment before saying, "The Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss does not belong to the 9 domains. It is in another mysterious domain. You don't need to know too much right now. You only need to know that the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss is an extremely good place. You will encounter many extinct races there." Eyebrows furrowed, Nye Tian looked at Earth Chief's enigmatic expression and somehow felt a bit of anticipation towards the Devil Abyss. However, at this time Earth Chief suddenly raised his brows and looked at Nye Tian. "Your current strength is still too weak. If you enter the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss with your current strength, I'm afraid you won't survive more than 2 days." "HM?" Nye Tian was startled. He curled his lips slightly and said, "I know my strength very well. I don't need you to remind me." "Don't be angry. I'm just telling the truth." Earth Chief smiled faintly and flipped his hand. A white ball of light appeared in his palm, radiating an extremely powerful aura of life. "This is—" Nye Tian's eyes trembled when he saw the white ball of light. His expression immediately became dazed. "The Terra Vein Source." Earth Chief smiled faintly and said, "Consider this a small gift for you. Fuse with the Terra Vein Source. I'm sure your strength will increase. Take it." With that, Earth Chief handed over the Terra Vein Source. Nye Tian's eyes trembled slightly as he accepted the Terra Vein Source. Back at the 9 Dragons Earth Vein, the Terra Vein Source had been divided into 3 parts. One was obtained by Nye Tian, one was obtained by Lian Jiufeng, and one was obtained by Luo Xian. After Luo Xian died, the Terra Vein Source in her body was stolen by Lian Jiufeng. Earth Chief must have obtained the Terra Vein Source from Lian Jiufeng. Chapter 2034. Looking at the Terra Source in his hand, Nye Tian's lips curled up. He really didn't think that Earth Leader would give him the Terra Source. This was a pretty good surprise. "Nye Tian, how long do you need to deal with the matter at hand?" Earth Leader asked bluntly. After a moment of pondering, Nye Tian gave a conservative estimate. "About half a month. In fact, Third Lady Gongsuan's matter was over. Next, Nye Tian needed to deal with the Inky Dragon Sword. At the same time, he calculated that Rui Qianyu was about to merge with the Slaughter Inheritance, so he still needed to deal with the matter at hand. Half a month's time was enough for him." "Half a month," Earth Leader murmured, then smiled and said, "Good. Then we'll meet in half a month at the God Exclusion Zone, Demon Sealing City." "Lord Earth Leader, you trust me so much. Aren't you afraid that I won't go?" Nye Tian asked Earth Leader with a faint smile. Earth Leader also smiled and said confidently, "Nye Tian, I, Earth Leader, have lived for hundreds of thousands of years. I believe I have some ability to judge people. You're not the kind of person to go back on your word. Nye Tian shook his head with a smile. Then it's a promise. In half a month, at the God Exclusion Zone, Demon Sealing City. Earth Leader nodded and looked at Cher. He bowed and said, Your Highness, let's go. Cher nodded lightly. Her beautiful eyes roamed over Nye Tian. She seemed to want to say something, but in the end, she didn't. Earth Leader and Cher didn't linger. They moved and left directly. Nye Tian couldn't help but frown as he watched the two leave. Worry appeared on his face. He was very puzzled as to why Shui-Er's memories would be sealed. From Earth Leader's reaction, the inescapable net was also very anxious about this matter. That was why they had traveled tens of thousands of miles to the Sea of Evil Edge to find Nye Tian. In order to help Cher recover her memory, the inescapable net not only sent Earth Leader to negotiate, but also offered very generous conditions. First, they saved Third Lady Gongsun, then they offered the pterosaurs. From this, it could be seen that the inescapable net attached great importance to Cher's memory recovery. Whether Cher can recover her memory or not is related to the Underworld Emperor's awakening. Of course, the inescapable net is very nervous. At this moment, Little Fat Cat's voice rang out, but there was a trace of unconcealable worry in its tone. Little Fatty, what did you sense? Nye Tian was taken aback and couldn't help but ask. Little Fat Cat shook its head and said, Nye Tian, I just have a very strange feeling. Perhaps after Shui-Er regains her memories, something terrible will happen. What do you mean? Nye Tian frowned, a worried look on his face. I don't know either. The fat cat had a conflicted look on its face as it said, However, my chinchilla intuition has always been very accurate, so you have to be mentally prepared. And Nye Tian nodded and said, No matter what happens after Cher recovers her memories, I will accept it. Letting Cher recover her memories was Nye Tian's choice. No matter what the result was, he would accept it. Fatty, have you heard of the Myriad Devil Abyss? Nye Tian suddenly thought of the Myriad Devil Abyss and couldn't help asking. He was very curious as to what kind of place the Myriad Devil Abyss was. According to Earth Chief, the Myriad Devil Abyss was in another realm outside of the 9 realms. He also said something very interesting. He said that Nye Tian would encounter many extinct races in the Myriad Devil Abyss. This made Nye Tian look forward to the Myriad Devil Abyss even more. He couldn't wait to see what kind of world the legendary Myriad Devil Abyss was. No. Unexpectedly, the fat cat shook its head and said, This noble one has never heard of the Myriad Devil Abyss. Nye Tian was startled and couldn't help but wonder, Even you haven't heard of the Myriad Devil Abyss? It seems that it is indeed a very mysterious place. Nye Tian knew that the 9-tailed chinchilla's inherited memories were stored in the fat cat's mind. Those were enormous memories accumulated over countless years. The fat cat now had 6 tails and more than half of its memories had been awakened, but it had never heard of the Myriad Devil Abyss. It was indeed a mysterious place. No wonder Earth Chief said that the Myriad Devil Abyss was a place forgotten by the world. Nye Tian did not linger. He left directly and returned to the City Lord's estate very quickly. As soon as he returned to the courtyard, he saw Nye Dao and Guiwu Kuang-sha. Grandfather, Lord Guiwu. Guiwu Kuang-sha was not an outsider, so Nye Tian obviously did not avoid anything. He bowed slightly. Nye Tian, I'll be leaving soon. Nye Dao walked up, patted Nye Tian's shoulder, and said with a gratified expression. He had not seen Nye Tian for 2 years, and the latter's strength had increased far more than he had expected. In particular, when Guiwu Kuang-sha told him that Nye Tian had defeated the Sacred Parliament's Sacred Sword Kanglin, Nye Dao felt like he was dreaming. Nye Dao had heard of how monstrous Sacred Sword Kanglin was, but he could never have imagined that Nye Tian, who was only an early-stage overgod, could defeat Kanglin. He saw a terrifying possibility in Nye Tian. Once Nye Tian's strength reached the peak of the Overgod realm, he would definitely crush all the martial practitioners of the 9 realms, including the 9 gods of calamity. Grandfather, how is Rushi? Nye Tian's eyes flickered slightly. He asked. The person he was most concerned about was Mo Rushi, and of course, the child in her womb. If not for the Sacred Parliament and Xingtian Alliance's coercion, he would not have left Mo Rushi and her son. Nye Tian, don't worry. Rushi is currently in the Nye family's ancestral land. She is very safe. I can guarantee with my life that as long as the Wind and Cloud Alliance still exists, my granddaughter-in-law and her son will not be in any danger. Nye Dao nodded solemnly. The wrinkles on his face were trembling. He had been unable to protect his son back then, but now, he would definitely protect Mo Rushi and the others even if he had to give it his all. Nye Tian nodded deeply. He would not say thank you to his family. Although he had not spent much time with Nye Dao, he could feel deep love from this old man. Perhaps Nye Dao felt that he owed Nye Fenghua too much, so he wanted to make up for it with Nye Tian. Nye Tian, your talent is far above your father's. I believe that you will definitely become a supreme existence in the 9 realms in the future. Nye Dao's expression flickered as he looked at Nye Tian. He was extremely proud to have such an outstanding grandson. Grandfather, believe me, it won't be long before I end my current state of running around. The moment I reach the peak will be the time when the Sacred Parliament and Xingtian Alliance pay the price. Nye Tian nodded slightly. He looked into the distance, his heart filled with lofty sentiments. Nye Dao could feel Nye Tian's strong confidence, and the corners of his eyes actually became wet. He could not remember how many years it had been since he last shed tears, but now, he really could not control himself. Chapter 2035. At this moment, Nye Tian suddenly thought of something and could not help but look at Nye Dao. Grandfather, there's something I don't quite understand. I'd like to ask you. What is it? Nye Dao was stunned. My body has fused with the earth vein essence, but because of that, I've been hunted down by the Zhou family. It seems that the Zhou family is extremely interested in the earth vein essence. Even the patriarch of the Zhou family has personally appeared. If not for Lord Gui Wu protecting me, I would have probably died at the hands of the patriarch. I really want to know why the Zhou family is so interested in the earthline source. Nye Tian frowned as he recalled the time when he was chased by the Zhou family. Of course, he was not complaining to Nye Dao. He was just curious as to why the Zhou family was so interested in the earthline source. So something like that actually happened. Nye Dao's eyes trembled and immediately spat out an intense rage. He never thought that the patriarch of the Zhou family would actually make a move against Nye Tian. Grandfather, I don't want you to seek revenge on the Zhou family. I just feel that this matter is a little strange. Nye Tian nodded. Nye Dao calmed down, but his expression changed. After a moment of silence, he finally said, I do know that the Zhou family wants the earthline source. But I can't tell you why. This is a secret regarding the 9 great clans of creation. Only the patriarchs of the 9 clans have the right to know about it. When you're strong enough one day, I'll pass the position of patriarch to you. At that time, you'll know why the Zhou family wants the earthline source. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, but he could only nod without asking any further. In reality, he had an even greater doubt in his heart, but since Nye Dao could not say it, he did not pursue the matter. He was truly curious about what kind of shocking secret the 9 great clans of creation were hiding. Nye Tian had heard a lot about the 9 great clans who had created the world, but he didn't know the truth. Perhaps only when he became the clan master of the Nye clan would he be able to truly understand the 9 great clans. Nye Dao did not delay any further. As the leader of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, he could not leave the alliance for too long, especially after his conflict with Jiang Lai. Grandpa, I definitely won't let you down. Nye Tian looked at Nye Dao's departing figure and said heavily in his heart. After Nie Dao left, only Nie Tian and Gui Wuquang Sha were left in the small courtyard. Nie Tian naturally knew why the ghost Martial Wild Sand had come. It was definitely because of the matter regarding Jian Qinqi. With a thought from Nie Tian, the 9 extremes appeared, and Jian Jingyun walked out of it. After Jian Jingyun was injured, he had been recuperating in the 9 extreme. He was Jian Qingqi's grandson, so he should know about Jian Qingqi's matters. Jian Jingyun, it seems like you've recovered quite well. Nie Tian looked at Jian Jingyun. The latter's aura had already recovered. In a few more days, he would completely recover. Yes, Jian Jingyun slightly nodded his head, the corners of his mouth rose, and he said, Nie Tian, thank you very much. Nie Tian only smiled. With a flip of his palm, the inky jade dragon sword appeared in his hand. This is... Jian Jingyun suddenly saw the long sword in Nie Tian's hand, and his expression instantly changed. He said in shock, Inky Jade Dragon Sword. The reason why he was so shocked was not only because the Inky Jade Dragon Sword was a famous sword that was comparable to the sacred sword in the 9 territories, but also because Jian Qingqi's soul was sealed within the Inky Jade Dragon Sword. When Gui Wuquang Sha saw the Inky Jade Dragon Sword, his eyes couldn't help but tremble, revealing a blazing divine light. Lord Guiwu, Jian Jingyun, don't be anxious. It won't be easy to release the Sword Elder's soul from the Inky Jade Dragon Sword. Nie Tian smiled bitterly. He had already sensed that there was an extremely powerful spiritual seal within the Inky Jade Dragon Sword. Even he couldn't sense the existence of the Sword Elder's soul. Only the fat cat could barely sense it. Gui Wuquang Sha and Jian Jingyun's senses were below Nie Tian's, so they couldn't sense the existence of Jian Qingqi at all. Spiritual seal. When Gui Wuquang Sha and Jian Jingyun heard Nie Tian's words, their faces changed. It seemed that the situation was more complicated than they had imagined. Rescuing Jian Qingqi wasn't going to be an easy task. Fat, come out. Nie Tian shouted for Fat Cat to come out. If they wanted to break the spiritual seal within the Inky Jade Dragon Sword, they still needed to rely on Fat Cat. Fat Cat's figure appeared on Nie Tian's shoulder, but her face didn't look good. Fat, is the spiritual seal within the Inky Jade Dragon Sword very difficult to break? Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he saw the ugly expression on Fat Cat's face. Fat Cat shook her head, sighed softly, and said, I have already sensed it. The spiritual seal within the Inky Jade Dragon Sword isn't very strong. I will be able to break it in a few days. However, the most troublesome thing is how to reconstruct Jian Qingqi's body. What do you mean? Nie Tian was stunned for a moment and asked back. Gui Wuquang Sha and Jian Jingyun's eyes were burning with passion, waiting for Fat Cat to explain clearly. Fat Cat smiled bitterly and said, You all know that after a Divine Realm warrior dies, if the divine spark isn't destroyed, the soul won't be destroyed either. At this time, as long as the soul is found a suitable replacement for the body, the warrior can be reborn. Yes. Nie Tian and the others nodded. They obviously knew this point. The divine spark originally contained the warrior's complete soul and memories. As long as the divine spark wasn't destroyed, the warrior would have the chance to be reborn. Fat Cat smiled bitterly again and said, Then have you ever heard of many warriors who used the divine spark to be reborn after they died? Nie Tian was stunned and couldn't help but shake his head. Although the divine spark wasn't destroyed and could be reborn, there weren't many warriors who could truly be reborn. Fat Cat nodded with a smile and continued, Warriors can use the divine spark to be reborn, but those who actually do it and succeed are few and far between. It's not because of anything else, it's because it's very difficult to find a suitable replacement body. Generally speaking, the stronger a warrior is, the stronger their martial body, and the stronger their soul. Therefore, the stronger the warrior, the higher the requirement for a replacement body. It's already very difficult to find a replacement body for a lower god warrior, and it's even more difficult to find a replacement body for a paramount god warrior. It's precisely because of this reason that it's very difficult for those paramount gods to be reborn even if their divine sparks remain after they die. Jian Qingqi was already an early paramount god expert, and his soul is very powerful. It's very difficult to find a suitable replacement body. Speaking up to here, Fat Cat couldn't help but sigh. Fat, no matter how strong Sword Elder's soul is, it can't be stronger than Sakura. Since we can find a suitable body for Sakura, why can't we find a suitable body for Sword Elder? Nie Tian asked with a frown. The stronger a warrior was when they were alive, the higher the requirement for a replacement body. Nie Tian understood this very well. After all, as a warrior grew stronger, their martial experience would become more complex and powerful. However, he didn't expect that Jian Qingqi was already an early paramount god expert hundreds of thousands of years ago. Even so, Jian Qingqi's soul couldn't be stronger than Sakura's. One must know that Sakura was a peak paramount god expert. Chapter 2036. Nie Tian found it strange. Did Fat Cat think that finding a body for Sword Elder would be harder than finding a body for Sakura Tian? Nie Tian, let me ask you, do you still remember what Shi Tian's physical body is? Little Fat Cat's figure moved and floated in the air, its pair of blue eyes staring at Nie Tian as it asked. The heart of the Ice Devil. Nie Tian nodded. Of course he remembered what Sakura Tian's body was. It was the heart of the Ice Devil. The heart of the Ice Devil was the crystallization of the power of an ancient beast, the Ice Devil Silkworm. It contained an extremely powerful life force, which was why Sakura Tian could be resurrected. However, the heart of the Ice Devil was very difficult to find. Nie Tian had only found it by chance when he killed Bing Shuanghan during the Jiu Ying's hunting ban. It would be almost impossible for him to find another ice demon's heart. Yes, the heart of the Ice Devil. Fat Cat nodded. It was a complete coincidence that we were able to obtain the heart of the Ice Devil. Otherwise, we would have to use the seven-leaf dragon's mouth orchid to reconstruct Sakura Tian's body. Although the seven-leaf dragon's mouth orchid could also resurrect Sakura Tian, it definitely wouldn't make him so strong. After Sakura Tian was resurrected, he was able to retain his original sword Dao cultivation, and even his martial Dao cultivation was restored to the early paramount god level. This wasn't because of his powerful soul, but because of the heart of the Ice Devil. At this time, Jian Jingyun couldn't help but interrupt. Lord Fat, I don't need Grandpa to be strong after his resurrection. As long as he can be resurrected, it's fine. Nie Tian nodded. Since the seven-leaf dragon's mouth orchid can be Sakura Tian's body, it can also be Sword Elder's body. Even if Sword Elder doesn't have the same strength after his resurrection, it doesn't matter. Fat Cat looked at Jian Jingyun and Nie Tian. She shook her head and sighed. You two are too naive. If the seven-leaf dragon's mouth orchid could really be Jian Qingqi's body, I wouldn't have to worry so much. What do you mean? Nie Tian and Jian Jingyun were startled at the same time. So, they asked in astonishment. If the seven-leaf dragon's tongue orchid couldn't become Jian Qingqi's body, could it be that his soul was stronger than Sakura's? When a cultivator's soul was reborn, the replacement of the physical body was very important. The most suitable replacement of the physical body could not only restore the cultivator's strength to its original state, but it could even increase the cultivator's martial Dao talent. However, Nie Tian and Jian Jingyun did not have many requests. They only wanted Jian Qingqi to be revived. But now, it seemed like it would be extremely difficult for Jian Qingqi to revive. Fine, I'll tell you the truth then. When Fat Cat saw how anxious Nie Tian and Jian Jingyun were, she could only shake her head and say, originally, Jian Qingqi's soul was not very strong. However, the problem is that his previous body was very special, causing his soul to mutate. Therefore, ordinary body replacements are not suitable for him. Unique physical body? Nye Tian frowned and said directly, Fat, just say it. Yes. Fat Cat nodded her head. She hesitated for a moment before saying, Jian Qingqi's original martial body was fused with a type of power, a type of origin energy. The fire origin energy, Li fire essence. This. When Ye Tian, Jian Jingyun and Ghost Martial Wild Sand heard Fat Cat's words, they were stunned at the same time. They were so shocked that they could not speak. They never thought that Jian Qingqi had fused with a type of origin energy when he was alive. Moreover, it was the fire origin energy, Li fire essence. Fat Cat looked at the shocked expressions of the three and could not help but laugh bitterly. She said, It is because Jian Qingqi fused with the Li fire essence that his previous body was very unique. This also caused his soul to mutate. Therefore, the 7-leaf dragon's tongue orchid could not become his body. Nye Tian and the others were stunned on the spot. They could not say a word for a long time. Especially Nye Tian. His eyes were dull, as if he was thinking about something. After a while, Ghost Martial Wild Sand and Jian Jingyun's expressions slightly calmed down. However, Nye Tian's expression became more and more shocked. It was as if he had discovered something very frightening. Origin energy, it was the origin energy again. The fire origin energy, Li fire essence. This was the 4th type of origin energy that Nye Tian had come into contact with. Currently, there were 2 types of origin energy in his body. The earth origin energy was the earth veins origin. The darkness origin energy was the heart of darkness. The earth veins origin was a part of the earth vein. The darkness origin was one of the 3 bodies of the dark abyss. The origin energy that Nye Tian had fused with was not complete. However, it was of great help to his martial body. Especially the earth veins origin, it allowed him to have a recovery ability that far surpassed ordinary people. As for the heart of darkness, Nye Tian had never used it before. Therefore, he was not sure of the true power of the darkness origin. In addition, he had also met the swordsman who possessed the wind origin energy, the storm's extremity, Xianyuan Yunsong. And now, he had learned from Fat Cat that the sword elder had actually fused with the fire origin energy. Actually, when he asked Nye Dao about how he was being hunted down by the Zhou clan for possessing the Terra vein source, he already had a very strange guess in his heart. Now, he felt that his guess might be correct. Nye Tian felt that the 9 great families of the world's creation were related to the 9 great origin energy. The earth origin energy was related to the Zhou family. Therefore, Nye Tian, who possessed the earth veins origin, was pursued by the Zhou family. The darkness origin energy was related to the Qi Wu family. This was because Nye Tian's heart of darkness had been obtained from the Qi Wu family's ancestral land. Moreover, the Holy Mother of Jiuying also had the darkness origin energy within her body. The wind origin energy was related to the Xianyuan family. Therefore, Xianyuan Yunsong's body had the storm's power. The fire origin energy was related to the Jian family. Jian Qingqi had fused with the power of the Li fire essence. All the origin energy that Nye Tian had encountered was related to the 9 great families of the world's creation. Therefore, he vaguely felt that the 9 great origin energy might be related to the 9 great families of the world's creation. Previously, Nye Dao had said that the 9 great families of the world's creation were hiding a big secret. Nye Tian guessed that this big secret might be related to the 9 great origin energy. However, Nye Dao had also said that this secret could only be known by the heads of the 9 great families. Moreover, it was absolutely not allowed to be leaked to others. Otherwise, Nye Dao wouldn't have kept it a secret from Nye Tian. What exactly was the relationship between the 9 great families of the world's creation and the 9 great origin energy? When Nye Tian thought of this, his face trembled. He vaguely felt that he was getting closer to a shocking secret. Nye Tian, are you all right? Fat Cat couldn't help but shout when she saw that Nye Tian hadn't reacted for a long time. Only then did Nye Tian react. He waved his hand and said, "I'm fine." He didn't voice his conjecture. On one hand, he didn't want Fat Cat to worry. On the other hand, it was just his conjecture. It hadn't been verified yet. Could it be because the Sword Elder once fused with the fire origin energy that his physical body can't be reconstructed? Nye Tian became cold and asked solemnly. Chapter 2037. When Nye Tian and the others heard Fat Cat's words, they were stunned and remained silent. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Nye Tian tried his best to obtain the Inky Jade Dragon Sword to revive Jian Qinqi. Who would have thought that even after obtaining the Inky Jade Dragon Sword, he still couldn't revive Jian Qinqi? But you don't have to worry too much. At least Jian Qinqi is safe in the Inky Jade Dragon Sword. Although it's hard to find a replacement for his body, it doesn't mean that it's impossible. Anyway, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. As long as you have the confidence, you can definitely find one. Fat Cat smiled and comforted everyone awkwardly. Nye Tian coughed and nodded heavily. Since things have come to this point, this is the only way. Gui Wu Guangsha and Jian Jingyun nodded helplessly. They could only accept reality. Originally, Nye Tian planned to give the Inky Jade Dragon Sword to Gui Wu Guangsha or Jian Jingyun, but now he can only carry it himself. Now, Fat Cat is the only one who can communicate with Jian Qinqi. Perhaps things will take a turn for the better in the future. Nye Tian will soon go to the 10,000-degree demon abyss. It is a very mysterious place. If he is lucky, he may be able to find something suitable to be Jian Qinqi's body. Since Jian Qinqi has fused with the fire origin energy, where is the fire origin energy now? Is it imprisoned in the Inky Jade Dragon Sword? Nye Tian suddenly thought of the fire origin energy and couldn't help but ask. Of course not. Fat Cat bitterly smiled and said, since Jiang Lai destroyed Jian Qinqi's body, of course he took the fire origin energy for himself. Perhaps this is why he captured Jian Qinqi. Nye Tian froze for a moment and couldn't help but shake his head. Originally, he wanted to see what the fire origin energy was like. Now it seems that he was thinking too much. Jiang Lai, I, Jian Jingyun, swear that one day I will kill you with my own hands. Jian Jingyun clenched his fists and roared with a ferocious expression. Nye Tian patted Jian Jingyun on the shoulder, signaling him to calm down. The matter of Jian Qinqi could only be dealt with like this for now. Gui Wu Guangsha and Jian Jingyun talked with Nye Tian for a while before leaving. Nye Tian returned to his room alone and was in a bad mood. It wasn't easy to obtain the Black Jade Dragon Sword, but he still couldn't revive Jian Qinqi. He couldn't even communicate with Jian Qinqi. How could he not be depressed? I wonder how Rui Qianyu is doing. Looking at the time, the inheritance fusion should be over soon. Nye Tian thought of Rui Qianyu and prepared to go to the 9 Superbs to take a look. However, at that moment the Fat Cat's voice rang out. Nye Tian, I have something to remind you of. What is it? Nye Tian was stunned for a moment. He felt that Fat Cat's tone was a bit off, and his face couldn't help but sink. It's about the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast, the Fat Cat said solemnly. 9 Superbs Chaos Beast? Nye Tian's eyes trembled and then he laughed. I was going to tell you about this too. During the battle of the top 8 of Xiefeng's sword conference, Little 9 appeared. That power is insane. I don't even know when Little 9 grew to such a terrifying level. Nye Tian, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. The Fat Cat's face was very ugly. Nye Tian, don't you think that the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast is unbelievably strong? Nye Tian frowned and couldn't help but nod. The Fat Cat was right. The 9 Superbs Chaos Beast was ridiculously strong. With his current battle prowess, he could even contend against a middle paramount god if he went all out. The reason he could defeat the late-stage paramount god Songlan was because the latter's sword intent was strange. It had an effect on his forbidden talisman. If it weren't for that, it would have been very difficult for Nie Tian to defeat Songlan. But when the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast appeared and slapped the mid-stage paramount god Wraith Soul Remnant to death, Feng Huo and Bing Hong were so frightened that they immediately admitted defeat. The 9 Superbs Chaos Beast's battle prowess was far beyond Nie Tian's expectations. Nie Tian estimated that the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast's current battle prowess was slightly on par with a slightly weaker peak paramount god. But that was the strangest part, because Nie Tian himself was only an early-stage overgod. A martial artist's primordial spirit was naturally connected to their aura. The stronger the martial artist, the stronger their primordial spirit, and the weaker the martial artist, the weaker their primordial spirit. But the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast was completely different from Nie Tian's strength. It had nothing to do with Nie Tian's own strength. In truth, when the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast was first born, Nie Tian had discovered that it was a primordial spirit with its own consciousness. It was as if the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast didn't rely on Nie Tian to exist. Instead, it was temporarily residing in Nie Tian's primordial spirit space. Nie Tian forced himself to calm down and asked in a deep voice, "Fatty, did you discover something?" The fat cat nodded. "I have some memories of the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast. Although the images aren't clear, I can tell that the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast doesn't belong to this world." Doesn't belong to this world. Nie Tian was stunned. His expression changed, and he was shocked. He really didn't understand what the fat cat meant when it said the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast didn't belong to this world. The 9 Superbs Chaos Beast was in his primordial spirit space. It had helped him survive many dangerous situations. It was too contradictory to say that the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast didn't belong to this world. The fat cat shook its head. Its expression became strange. "I don't know why, but the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast is too strong. There shouldn't be such a strong thing in this world." Too strong? Nie Tian was stunned. The 9 Superbs Chaos Beast is very strong, but compared to a peak paramount god, it's still much weaker. Nie Tian, don't you understand? The fat cat shook its head. The 9 Superbs Chaos Beast is still in its infancy. If it grows up, this world won't be able to contain it. When Nie Tian heard the fat cat's words, his expression froze. He couldn't help but gulp. How could he believe that the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast was still in its infancy? When the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast appeared, its body was thousands of meters long. A young creature that was a few thousand meters in size? That was too ridiculous. If what the fat cat said was true, then the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast was really strong. It shouldn't exist in this world. But what Nie Tian didn't understand was, if the 9 Superbs Chaos Beast wasn't a creature of this world, why was it born in his primordial spirit space? It didn't make sense. Chapter 2038. In the room, Nie Tian heard the fat cat warning him not to use the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast again. He was stunned and speechless for a long time. After a while, Nie Tian's expression recovered slightly. He asked doubtfully, "Fat, why can't I use the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast again?" "I don't know either." Unexpectedly, the fat cat shook its head and said, "I have a very strong feeling that if you continue to use the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast, something terrible will happen." "This?" Nie Tian was speechless. He said, "Can't I use the 9 Extremes Chaotic Beast even in a life-or-death situation?" The fat cat didn't know why, but it didn't allow Nie Tian to use the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast again. This made him a little depressed. "You can't use it." The fat cat shook its head and said, "Even in the most dangerous situation, you can't use the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. Otherwise, you will definitely regret it." Nie Tian frowned and his expression froze. The fat cat said this just based on a feeling. Wasn't it a little too shocking? The fat cat looked at Nie Tian. Nie Tian seemed to be a little suspicious. The fat cat's face darkened again. Nye Tian, you must remember what I said. You must never use the 9 extreme chaos beast again. Alright, I promise you. Seeing the little fat cat's reaction, Nye Tian could only nod his head and promise. Although he didn't know why the fat cat was so nervous, he trusted the fat cat's judgment. However, he was very confused. What kind of existence was the 9 extreme chaos beast? Why was the fat cat so afraid? Actually, Nye Tian didn't know that when he was fighting with Bu Wu Qianqiu on the path of massacre, the massacring demon Venerable had said the same thing when he used the 9 extreme chaos beast. The 9 extreme chaos beast was a primordial spirit that shouldn't exist in this world. The massacring demon Venerable was also very confused. Why would a 9th extreme chaos beast appear on Nye Tian's body? After receiving Fat Cat's warning, Nye Tian slowly regained his composure. Next, he took out the 9 extremities. With a single thought, he entered the 9 extremities. Nye Tian. As soon as Nye Tian entered the 9 extreme, Sakra's figure appeared. The way he looked at Nye Tian was very strange, releasing an abnormally excited expression. What's wrong? Nye Tian was stunned for a moment, unable to react. Look up and you'll know. Sakra laughed and pointed to the sky with his little finger. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he raised his head to look at the sky. At this moment, the scene that greeted Nye Tian's eyes caused him to be completely stunned. In the space, the path of slaughter was floating, constantly releasing colorful lights that flowed in all directions. The gorgeous and gentle light filled the space, and the world was filled with a kind of pure and holy aura. Such a scene was too beautiful. It was so beautiful that it was dazzling, so beautiful that it could move one's soul, so beautiful that it should not exist. What's going on? Nye Tian was stunned and said in a daze. He did not expect that there would be such a scene in the 9 extremities. I don't know either. This scene has been going on for a long time. It seems that something is happening in the path of slaughter, Sakra explained softly, as if he was unwilling to disturb the peace of the beautiful scenery in front of him. This should be the 9-color dreamland of the 9-color pupils. At this time, the figure of Fat Cat appeared. Looking at the scene in the sky, her face was trembling. 9-color dreamland? Nye Tian was stunned for a moment, and he said in astonishment, could it be that Rui Qianyu's 9-color pupils have all 9 pupils opened? All 9 pupils opened, that was too terrifying. Nye Tian remembered that before Rui Qianyu integrated the path of slaughter, she only opened 6 pupils. Yes, it's very likely. The fat cat's face was trembling slightly, and she nodded and said, Gulp. Nye Tian's eyes trembled and his throat moved. The shock in his heart was written on his face. The inheritance of slaughter actually made Rui Qianyu open all 9 pupils. That was too terrifying. He really didn't know what realm Rui Qianyu's strength would be improved after integrating the inheritance of slaughter. Nye Tian, looking at the situation, Rui Qianyu's integration of the inheritance of slaughter is about to end, and she will come out of the path of slaughter soon. Fat Cat calmed down and smiled, as if she was looking forward to it very much. Nye Tian was also excited, and he said, I don't know what realm Qianyu's strength will reach after integrating the inheritance of slaughter. I remember she was a higher deity before. I wonder if she can break through to the Lord level? Break through to the Lord level? Fat Cat raised her eyebrows, and she looked at Nye Tian unhappily. My requirement is too high. Nye Tian was stunned and he smiled awkwardly. Then she should at least be at the peak of the higher deity. Fat Cat looked at Nye Tian again, and she directly rolled her eyes and said, Kid, what do you think the sage's inheritance is? Cabbages on the street? It's the martial arts inheritance left by a sage. Many warriors can improve their strength to a whole new realm after integrating a martial arts inheritance. And Rui Qianyu integrated the martial arts inheritance left by the slaughtered demon Venerable, who is very powerful even among the sages. My conservative estimate is that when Rui Qianyu walks out of the path of slaughter, she will at least be at the peak of the Lord level. Peak of the Lord level. Nye Tian's expression suddenly changed, and even his voice was trembling. The inheritance of slaughter directly made Rui Qianyu advance from a higher deity to the peak of the Lord level. That's too crazy. Nye Tian spent so much effort to integrate the forbidden skill and the origin power, and he only reached the early stage of the Lord level after working so hard. But Rui Qianyu directly integrated the inheritance of slaughter and reached the peak of the Lord level. He could not help but feel bitter. Sakura was also shocked. If he had integrated the inheritance of slaughter back then, he would definitely have reached the peak of the Lord level by now. Boom! Just at that moment, the path of slaughter suddenly trembled. Immediately, the rainbow light formed a halo of light that spread out in the air like ripples. The scene before them was extremely beautiful and intoxicating. Rui Qianyu is coming out. Fat Cat's eyes flickered, and there was a burning look in them. Just as his voice trailed off, a beam of light suddenly shot out of the path of slaughter, and then a figure walked out. Under the light, she looked holy, noble, beautiful, and mysterious. When Nye Tian saw the figure's face, his eyes suddenly trembled, and he couldn't help but cry out, "Rui Qianyu!" But when he sent his divine sense over, his face stiffened and he said in a daze, "Early stage of the Lord level. Early stage of the Lord level." Rui Qianyu's strength had actually reached the early stage of the Lord level. This was even more terrifying than Fat Cat had guessed. Fat Cat had indeed made a very conservative estimate. The moment Rui Qianyu's figure appeared, the colorful light in the air suddenly surged, and in the blink of an eye, all of it rushed into her body. The 9 extremities world returned to its original peace. Rui Qianyu's figure moved, and she directly came to Nye Tian's side, a trace of excitement on her delicate face. But then she suddenly thought of something, and her expression became slightly nervous. She suddenly said to Nye Tian, "Nye Tian, the Demon Lord wants me to tell you something." Seeing that Rui Qianyu seemed to be very nervous, Nye Tian couldn't help but ask, "What is it?" Chapter 2039. 9-Level Chaos Beast. Nye Tian looked at Rui Qianyu. His eyes could not help but tremble, and his heart was filled with shock. Rui Qianyu had just walked out of the massacre path and successfully integrated the massacre inheritance. The first thing she did when she saw him was to mention the 9-level Chaos Beast. How could Nye Tian not be surprised? Coincidentally, Fat Cat had also just mentioned the 9-level Chaos Beast. He had also repeatedly warned Nye Tian not to use the 9-level Chaos Beast again. Now, Rui Qianyu had mentioned the 9-level Chaos Beast again. Moreover, it was the murderous demon Venerable who had asked her to pass on the message to Nye Tian. Of course, Nye Tian knew who the murderous demon Venerable was. Since he had specially told Rui Qianyu about the 9-level Chaos Beast, it must be something extraordinary. At that moment, Nye Tian was also very curious about what the murderous demon Venerable would say. Regarding the 9-level Chaos Beast, there were too many things that Nye Tian did not understand. There were also too many things that he wanted to understand. Nye Tian, the demon Venerable asked me to tell you that the 9-level Chaos Beast is a primordial spirit that does not belong to this world. Rui Qianyu took a deep breath. Her delicate face was actually trembling slightly as she spoke in a low voice. Nye Tian's eyes suddenly shrank. His expression changed abruptly. He felt as if his head had been ruthlessly smashed by someone. A primordial spirit that does not belong to this world. It was the same sentence again. It was exactly the same as the reminder that Fat Cat had given previously. One could imagine the shock in Nye Tian's heart at that moment. "Little girl, what else did the murderous demon Venerable say?" At that moment, Fat Cat's eyes were burning as he asked nervously. "The Demon Lord also said that the 9-level Chaos Beast was a powerful holy beast that was born at the beginning of the primordial chaos. He was very confused as to why the 9-level Chaos Beast would appear in this world and unexpectedly become Nye Tian's primordial spirit. Rui Qinyu thought for a while and said, Mr. Demon King wants me to tell Nye Tian that he cannot use the 9-level Chaos Beast in the future. Otherwise, he will attract very scary people. What do you mean? Nye Tian and Fat Cat were stunned at the same time, and then exclaimed at the same time. I don't know either. Rui Qinyu shook her head. She was equally confused. She said, The Demon Lord said that if Nye Tian continues to use the 9-level Chaos Beast, he will bring disaster to the 9 major territories. Those who are interested in the 9-level Chaos Beast can destroy all 9 realms in the blink of an eye. At this point, Rui Qinyu's voice trembled slightly. She was obviously very frightened. She clearly remembered that when the murderous demon Venerable told her these things, his eyes were so sad and desperate. To be able to make such a powerful person like the murderous demon Venerable feel despair, she wondered how powerful the person behind the 9-level Chaos Beast was. It was because of this that Rui Qinyu told Nye Tian about the 9-level Chaos Beast at the first moment. She knew that the murderous demon Venerable's words were definitely not a joke. This is so scary. After hearing Rui Qinyu's words, Nye Tian was stunned. He froze on the spot and did not react for a long time. He had originally thought that the Fat Cat's words were frightening enough, but he hadn't expected that Rui Qinyu's warning from the murderous demon Venerable would be even more frightening. According to the murderous demon Venerable, if Nye Tian continued to use the 9-level Chaos Beast, he would be detected by some terrifying figure. And these people would come to the 9 realms because of the 9-level Chaos Beast. When that time came, the 9 realms would be doomed. Could there really be such a terrifying existence who could destroy 9 realms in the blink of an eye? The strongest existence Nye Tian had encountered so far was a peak paramount god. He believed that peak paramount god experts had the power to destroy a world. In the planar worlds, such as the 3,000 lesser realms, peak paramount god experts could easily destroy them. But realms were different. They were high-level realms with stable spacetime. Even experts like the 9 calamity gods could not pose a threat to realms, no matter how much trouble they caused. With Nye Tian's current strength, he couldn't imagine what kind of existence could destroy 9 realms in the blink of an eye. But he believed the murderous demon Venerable's words. There was no reason for the latter to lie to him. After a while, Nye Tian suppressed his shock and asked in a trembling voice, Qianye, did the demon Venerable say anything else? The demon Venerable also said that he left some sealed memories in my black pupils. When you break through to the Saint Realm, you can retrieve the sealed memories. If you want to uncover the secrets behind the 9-level Chaos Beast, follow the instructions he left for you in the memories and go to the beginning of ancient times. As Rui Qinyu spoke, she frowned because she didn't know what the murderous demon Venerable had left behind. Nye Tian was stunned. It seemed that the murderous demon Venerable had left him some other information, but unfortunately, he couldn't see it now. According to the murderous demon Venerable, the 9-level Chaos Beast was born at the beginning of ancient times. But Nye Tian couldn't understand. What was the beginning of ancient times? Was it a time period? Was it a place? Or was it a very powerful existence? These secrets could only be unraveled in the future. But he was quite gratified. It seemed that the murderous demon Venerable was very confident in him and knew that he would definitely be able to break through to the Saint Realm. Little girl, has the murderous demon Venerable already? At this time, the Fat Cat's eyes flickered as he looked at Rui Qinyu and asked tentatively. Yes. Rui Qinyu's expression was a little gloomy. She nodded and said, The demon Venerable has already left. Nye Tian sighed. Of course, he understood that Rui Qinyu meant that the murderous demon Venerable had disappeared completely. In fact, he had long known that after Rui Qinyu merged with the murderous inheritance, the murderous demon Venerable would exhaust the last trace of his soul and disappear from this world. The reason why the murderous demon Venerable could exist for so long was actually to find a suitable successor for the murderous inheritance, and Rui Qianyu was the most suitable successor that he had found. After the murderous demon Venerable's reminder, Nie Tian made a decision in his heart. No matter what happened in the future, he would not use the 9-level Chaos Beast again. The 9-level Chaos Beast now was not only related to his life and death, but also the survival of the entire 9 major territories. If the 9 major territories suffered the fate of destruction because of the 9-level Chaos Beast, he would be guilty. Qianya, let's go out first. Nie Tian forced a smile and prepared to leave the 9-level Chaos Beast first. He really wanted to see how powerful Rui Qianyu was now. Chapter 2040. When Nie Tian, Sakura, and Rui Qianyu left the Ninefold, they didn't stay in the courtyard. Instead, they went to the city lord's mansion. Nie Tian wanted to see how strong Rui Qianyu was. Since Xian Zongfeng had left the city, Sakura was safe and didn't need to hide in the Ninefold. Recently, Fat Cat had been observing Sakura, but strangely enough, he didn't seem to be affected by Lian Wui's blood-weeping sword soul. It was as if the blood-weeping sword soul didn't affect him at all, which puzzled Fat Cat. In any case, it was a good thing that Sakura wasn't affected by the blood-weeping sword soul. Therefore, Fat Cat didn't pay too much attention to it. Currently, Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu were standing on 2 enormous stone pillars, staring at each other. Of course, they weren't going to fight, but Nie Tian wanted to see how strong Rui Qianyu was. You're an early paramount god now, aren't you, Qianya? Nie Tian asked with a faint smile. Yeah. Rui Qianyu nodded and smiled. Not only am I an early paramount god, but I've also opened all 9 of my 9-color pupils. I know. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Back when he had been in the 9 superbs, he had seen the 9-colored dreamland. Therefore, he had long since learned that Raindrop Qianya had activated all 9 of her pupils. Come on, make your move. Let me see how strong you are. Nie Tian produced the Starlight Heaven Slash. Alright. The corners of Thousand Leaves Raindrop's mouth curled up into a smile. Then, she flipped her palms, and a ball of green light appeared in the center of her palms. She pushed her palms forward, and suddenly, countless sharp green blades appeared in the air and shot towards Nie Tian. What a sharp aura! When Nie Tian sensed the incoming streams of energy, his expression flickered. Activating his warding talismans, he pushed his energy to the level of an early paramount god. Without hesitation, he swung his sword. Suddenly, the enormous sword turned into a roaring shadow of the sword. Like a ferocious beast, it pounced towards Rui Qianyu. The green blades in the air shattered under the impact of the terrifying sword shadows, and an ear-piercing rustling sound was heard in the air. Rui Qianyu looked at the approaching sword, but she was not afraid at all. Her graceful body moved slightly, and suddenly, a green divine E-power appeared and formed a mystic jade shield around her body. Bang! In the next moment, the violent sword shadow descended and bombarded the mysterious jade shield. A muffled sound actually erupted, and the sword shadow directly collapsed. What a powerful shield! Nie Tian said, his expression flickering. Never could he have guessed that Rui Qianyu's defenses would be this strong. Although Nie Tian hadn't used his full strength in that attack, it had still been enough to pose a threat to a mid-paramount god. Unfortunately, it hadn't been enough to threaten Rui Qianyu. Watch out, Nie Tian! Rui Qianyu shrieked. Blurring into motion, she stamped her foot onto the ground, and her eyes flickered as she unleashed eye-power. Instantly, a stream of crimson flame appeared, spreading out for thousands of meters as it bore down on Nie Tian. The power of the 9-color pupils. Nie Tian's eyes flickered, and he stabbed his sword out, causing a fiery sword image to appear, which slammed into the incoming flame. This time, Nie Tian was forced to use the power of his Star Soul flame. Rumble! High up in the sky, the raging flames exploded and turned into a scorching blast that spread out in all directions. Ag! Right at this moment, Raindrop Thousand Leaves suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream. Immediately, her figure was sent flying by the shockwave. Qianyu. The sudden change caused Nie Tian's expression to flicker. A pair of star soul wings appeared on his back, and he directly passed through the waves of flames and shot towards Raindrop Thousand Leaves. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian arrived at Rui Qianyu's side and pulled her into his arms. "Are you all right, Qianyu?" Nie Tian asked. Sensing Rui Qianyu's aura, he breathed a sigh of relief when he was sure she wasn't in any danger. "I'm fine." Rui Qianyu frowned and murmured, "I think it's because I just merged with the Slaughter inheritance, and the 9-color pupils are still adapting to it. That's why I lost control." Nie Tian carefully sensed Rui Qianyu's aura again. Making sure she wasn't in danger, he was relieved and said, "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have rushed to see your strength." Nie Tian, I. Rui Qianyu raised her head and stared at Nie Tian with her watery eyes. Her pretty face was extremely shy. Nie Tian was stunned, and then he realized he was still holding Rui Qianyu. But he didn't let go. Instead, he suddenly lowered his head and pressed his hot lips on the girl's lip. Rui Qianyu didn't resist, but hugged Nie Tian tightly. At this moment, Fat Cat retreated back into the origin fetus space and didn't look at Nie Tian anymore. Sakura also moved and was about to leave. However, at this moment a clear voice rang out. "Little brother Sakura, you're here." Lien Wui suddenly appeared and called Sakura. Seeing Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu, she couldn't help but shout, What are you doing?" Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu were shocked at the same time and quickly separated. Rui Qianyu blushed all the way to her ears. She was as shy as a flower. But Nie Tian didn't care. He smiled faintly and said, "Of course we're doing something serious." Sakura smiled awkwardly and quickly pulled Lien Wui away. "Qianyu, let's go." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said to Rui Qianyu, Go where?" Rui Qianyu was stunned for a moment. The blush on her face was still there. Nie Tian looked up at the sky and said, "It's getting late. Of course, we have to continue doing something serious." "What serious matter?" Rainy Thousand Leaves was stunned at first, but immediately understood. Her beautiful face became even redder, and she lowered her head even more. She used a voice that was as soft as a mosquito and said, "Yes." The corner of Nie Tian's mouth slightly raised. He pulled Rui Qianyu and left. The next day, the mottled sunlight shone on the walls of the room. Nie Tian stood up from the bed and turned around to look at the sleeping Rui Qianyu. He could not help but smile happily. Afterwards, Nie Tian did not disturb Rui Qianyu. Instead, he left the room by himself. He had already agreed with Earth Chief that he would set off for Demon Sealing City in a few days. Right now, he had something extremely important to do, which was fusing with the Earth Vein source. Earth Chief had given a great gift to Nie Tian, which was the Earth Vein source. Nie Tian was currently an early overgod. He believed that as long as he fused with the Earth Vein source, his strength would increase to mid-overgod or even late overgod. Chapter 2041. Several days later, in a small courtyard in the city lord's estate of the Shenwu city, Nie Tian walked out of his room and radiated with a sharp aura. His gaze was as sharp as a sword, and he seemed like an unsheathed sword. He had already fused with the source of the earth successfully. His strength had reached mid-overgod, and he was showing signs of breaking through to late overgod. However, that was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that his martial body had become even more powerful after fusing with the source of the earth. At the same time, he possessed an even more insane recovery rate. Nie Tian. Rui Qianyu appeared as soon as Nie Tian walked out of the room. She wore a purple dress with a green sash around her waist, which accentuated her perfect figure. "Qianya, let's go," Nie Tian smiled faintly. His face was filled with happiness. He had already told Rui Qianyu that they would be going to the Demon Sealing City in the God Sealing region. Nie Tian decided to bring Rui Qianyu with him this time. If there was any danger, he could get her to hide in the 9 extremities. Now, Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu prepared to go to the main hall of the city lord's estate and bid farewell to Gongsun Xingji and the others. Actually, there was one more thing that Nie Tian did not do after becoming the champion of the Evil Edge Sword competition, which was activate the Legend of Xinwu. The Legend of Xinwu was a legacy left behind by the first master of the Xinwu Sword Pagoda. He was a legendary swordsman and was extremely powerful. However, Nie Tian had never been interested in legacies. Even if he could activate the Legend of the Divine Martial, he wouldn't be willing to obtain it. He believed in his own strength, so he did not need anyone's legacy. Very soon, Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu arrived at the main hall of the city lord's estate. At this moment, Gongsun Xingji, Third Lady Gongsun, Fenghua Qianyu, Guiwu Quangsha, Jian Jingyun, Guiwu Kan, and the others were all there. Even Sakura and Lian Wui were there. Nie Tian. Gongsun Xingji hurriedly stood up when he saw Nie Tian arrive. He was extremely polite. A few days ago, Nie Tian had already helped Gongsun Xingji remove the forbidden blood seal from his body. He was now a true legendary swordsman. Master Divine Sword, you look well. Looks like you've recovered. With a faint smile, Nie Tian examined Gongsun Xingji with his soul awareness, and discovered that the forbidden blood seal's aura was completely gone. With a hearty smile, Gongsun Xing bowed deeply towards Nie Tian. It's all thanks to you that I was able to regain my new life, Mr. Nie Tian. Please accept a bow from me. No matter what, Gongsun Xingji was of the same generation as Nie Tian, so Nie Tian did not want to accept his bow. Master Divine Sword, you're exaggerating. Nie Tian hurriedly stepped forward and helped Gongsun Xingji up. At this moment, Gongsun Xingji was someone of the same generation as Nie Dao. Nie Tian did not want to accept his bow. At this moment, Fenghua Qianyu also walked over and said solemnly, "If Mr. needs my help in the future, please let me know. Even if it's a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, I will not refuse." Although Third Lady Gongsuan's life was saved by Earth Chief, the latter was only willing to help because of Nie Tian. Therefore, Fenghua Qianyu owed this favor to Nie Tian. Master Fenghua is too polite, Nie Tian smiled and said, "You don't have to be so polite. Just call me Nie Tian." Third Lady Gongsun smiled and walked forward, looking at Rui Qianyu and asked, "Nie Tian, this lady is so beautiful. Who is she?" Apart from Guiwu Quangsha and the others, no one else had seen Rui Qianyu before. They could not help but be curious. When did such an outstanding lady appear by Nie Tian's side? "She's my wife, Rui Qianyu." Nie Tian smiled and turned to look at Rui Qianyu. Rui Qianyu was stunned. Her beautiful eyes suddenly flickered and seemed to be filled with tears. She did not expect that Nie Tian would introduce himself in such a way. Nie Tian smiled gently. In his heart, Mo Rushi was his wife, Rui Qianyu was also his wife, and Cher was also his wife. He felt that he was extremely blessed to be able to obtain the favor of 3 girls at the same time. Following that, everyone sat down. "Nie Tian, do you really want to go to the God Prohibition region alone?" Guiwu Quangsha looked at Nie Tian and asked with a worried expression. Originally, he wanted to accompany Nie Tian to the God Prohibition region, but Nie Tian was going alone. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded his head. He had already decided that he would walk alone for the rest of the journey. He would not trouble Guiwu Quangsha anymore. At this time, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and said, "Master Guiwu, I have something to trouble you with." "Go ahead." Guiwu Quangsha replied happily. Nie Tian nodded slightly and said, "I have some friends in the God Prohibition region's subsidiary plane world, Heaven Boundary. I would like to trouble Master Guiwu to go there and bring them to the territory." Saying that, Nie Tian turned to look at Gongsun Xing and said, "Master Divine Sword, most of my friends are swordsmen, but they are not strong. I would like to let them join the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda. Is that okay? Of course. Gongsun Xing agreed and said, Mr. Nye Tian's friends are my friends. Mr. Nye Tian, rest assured. As long as your friends come to the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda, I promise to provide them with the best cultivation resources. Thank you, Master Divine Sword. Nye Tian nodded his thanks. In fact, he had long wanted to bring his disciples and friends from the God Prohibition region to the territory, but he had never had the chance. Now, he was taking advantage of this opportunity to do it. He believed that his disciples and friends would receive the best treatment in the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda. After doing this, Nye Tian felt like a stone had been lifted from his heart. Mr. Nye Tian, I have heard about Brother Jian Qinqi. I never thought that Jiang Lai would be so vicious to do such a thing. At that moment, Gongsun Xing suddenly spoke. His eyes flickered as though he was hesitating about something. Finally, he said, Mr. Nye Tian, I actually know of an item that can definitely reconstruct Brother Jian Qingqi's physical body. Really? Nye Tian's eyes trembled and he almost screamed. Guiwu Kuangsha, Jian Jingyun, and the others were also stunned. Their eyes suddenly became heated. They did not expect Gongsun Xingji to say such a thing. When Guiwu Kuangsha told Gongsun Sheng about Jian Qingqi, the latter did not say such a thing. Yes. Gongsun Xing nodded heavily, but his expression was very solemn. He said cautiously, In the Divine Martial Sword Pavilion, there is a notebook left behind by the first Master Divine Sword. The notebook recorded some of the first Master's secret. One of the secrets recorded an extremely mystical item. That item is called the Dragon Spring Vein. Dragon Spring Vein. Guiwu Kuangsha and the others were shocked when they heard Gongsun Xing's words. They were confused because they had never heard of the Dragon Spring Vein. Chapter 2042. The Dragon Spring Vein. Nye Tian froze on the spot when he heard these words. He had never expected Gongsun Xingji to mention the Dragon Spring Vein. The Dragon Spring Vein was something that Nye Tian had been searching for. When Nye Tian was still in the 3,000 Small Worlds, he had learned about the Dragon Spring Vein from the Dragon Soul Di Shi and had agreed to help Di Shi find the lost Dragon Spring Vein. However, too many things had happened later. The Demon Abyss, the Dragon Rebel Clan, and other forces had shown Nye Tian the great secret behind the Dragon Spring Vein. Now, the Divine Lord of the Dragon Rebel Clan, and I Jiaming, and Di Shi were searching for the Dragon Spring Vein. How could Nye Tian not be surprised that Gongsun Xingji had mentioned the Dragon Spring Vein? Nye Tian, what's wrong? Do you know about the Dragon Spring Vein? Gongsun Xingji couldn't help but ask when he saw that Nye Tian was stunned. Only then did Nye Tian come to his senses. His expression flickered slightly as he said in a low voice, I do know about the Dragon Spring Vein. It's a sacred relic of the ancient Dragon Clan. It's said that it's what gave rise to the Divine Dragon Clan. However, the Dragon Spring Vein has been lost for a long time. No one knows where it is. At this point, Nye Tian suddenly looked at Gongsun Xingji and asked in a trembling voice, Lord Divine Sword Master, according to the records you read, where did the first Lord Divine Sword Master see the Dragon Spring Vein? The Dragon Spring Vein was the sacred relic of the entire Dragon Clan. Nye Tian had no doubt that the Dragon Spring Vein could reconstruct Jian Qingqi's body. However, where was he going to find the Dragon Spring Vein? In a place called the Demon Abyss of 10,000 degrees. Gongsun Xingji hesitated but finally said it. Demon Abyss of 10,000 degrees. Upon hearing these words, Nye Tian's expression changed once again. His expression, which had just eased up, once again stiffened, and he stood rooted to the ground like an idiot. Demon Abyss of 10,000 degrees. This was another place that Nye Tian knew. He had just learned about it and was about to go there. One coincidence followed by another. Nye Tian's mind was in a mess. The first-generation Divine Sword Master saw the legendary dragon Spring Vein in the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss, and Nye Tian was about to go to the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss. This kind of coincidence made him feel like he was dreaming. When Gongsun Xingji, Guiwu Guangsha and the others saw Nye Tian's reaction, they were all stunned. After a long time, they asked in astonishment, "Nye Tian, don't tell me you even know about the Myriad Demon Abyss?" Nye Tian knew about the Dragon Spring Vein and the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss. Just who was he? How did he know everything? It had to be said that these were just coincidences. Nye Tian had only learned about the Myriad Devil Abyss not too long ago. Yes. Nye Tian forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart and calmed himself down. He took a deep breath and said, "To tell you the truth, I made a deal with Earth Chief. The place I really want to go next is the Myriad Demon Abyss." "You want to go to the Myriad Demon Abyss?" Gongsun Xingji's expression changed. He suddenly let out a strange cry and said in fear, "You can't go. The Myriad Demon Abyss absolutely cannot go." Seeing Gongsun Xingji's reaction, Nye Tian couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He said in astonishment, "Lord Divine Sword Master, why can't I go to the Myriad Demon Abyss?" The others also looked at Gongsun Xingji in confusion. The latter's reaction was indeed a bit too much. Gongsun Xingji took a deep breath and said, "Nye Tian, you don't know, but I saw in the first-generation Divine Sword Master's notes that the Myriad Demon Abyss is an extremely dangerous place. It is a place ruled by other races. They hate humans very much and they kill humans on sight. It is impossible for human martial artists to survive in the Myriad Demon Abyss." Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed, and his expression changed slightly. Actually, Earth Chief had already told him that he would see many extinct races in the Myriad Demon Abyss. However, Earth Chief didn't tell him that the Myriad Demon Abyss was ruled by other races and that humans were not welcome in the Myriad Demon Abyss. At this time, Gongsun Xingji continued, "Nye Tian, according to the notes, the martial artists in the Myriad Demon Abyss are extremely powerful and far more ferocious than the martial artists of the 9 regions. Therefore, you absolutely cannot go to the Myriad Demon Abyss." "Lord Divine Sword Master, don't say any more. Since I have already promised Earth Chief, I will definitely abide by the agreement. No matter how dangerous the Myriad Demon Abyss is, I must go," Nye Tian said with a faint smile. He would definitely go to the Myriad Demon Abyss. Moreover, the Dragon Spring Vein had once appeared in the Myriad Demon Abyss. This strengthened his determination to go there even more. Sigh. Gongsun Xingji couldn't help but sigh when he saw Nye Tian's firm attitude. He knew that Nye Tian wasn't the kind of person who would easily change his mind, so there was no point in saying anything else. "Lord Divine Sword Master, if possible, I would like to borrow the first Lord Divine Sword Master's notes. Is that okay?" Nye Tian looked at Gongsun Xingji and suddenly asked. He knew nothing about the Myriad Demon Abyss. It would be great if he could read the notes that Gongsun Xingji mentioned. Gongsun Xingji's expression changed and became very embarrassed. He said, "Nye Tian, the notes are no longer with me. I asked the Guardian Elder of Sword Tower. The notes should have been taken by Xian Zongfeng." Eyebrows furrowed, Nye Tian growled, "Damn it! Xian Zongfeng was too despicable. Not only did he escape, but he also took the notes with him." Nye Tian was curious as to why Xian Zongfeng wanted the note. At this time, Nye Tian suddenly looked at Sakura. The latter lowered his head and didn't say anything. He seemed to be thinking about something. Sakura was the first Divine Sword Master of the Shenwu Sword Pagoda, and he was also the junior brother of the first Divine Sword Master. Perhaps he knew something. "Lord Divine Sword Master, thank you for the information." Nye Tian stood up and was ready to leave. At this time, Sakura suddenly stood up and said, "Nye Tian, I'll go with you." Nye Tian's gaze slightly froze. He couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. Sakura originally planned to stay in Shenwu City, and Nie Tian could only agree. Sakura had already helped him a lot. He couldn't let the former follow him all the time. Now that Sakura suddenly suggested going to the Myriad Demon Abyss with him, Nie Tian was very surprised. "Little brother Sakura, you..." Lien Wui was stunned. Her eyes turned red and she was about to cry. The reason why Sakura wanted to stay in Shinwu City was because of Lien Wui. "Wui, wait for me to come back." Sakura nodded and didn't explain too much to Lien Wui. He raised his head and said to Nie Tian, let's go. Nie Tian looked at Sakura, then at Lien Wui, and finally nodded. Sakura must have noticed something for him to change his mind at this time. It was just that it wasn't convenient for him to say it now. Nie Tian didn't hesitate anymore. He turned around and walked out of the hall. He took out the realm ship and was ready to leave. The realm ship was given to him by Gue Wuchan. It would be very convenient for him to travel between realms in the future. Chapter 2043. What a powerful sword aura! Everyone looked up in shock at the sword aura in the sky. This sword aura was boundless. The sword aura spread for tens of thousands of meters, and the sword will turned into a surging pressure that filled the air. Even the space was pulled taut. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he felt the sword pressure spreading in the air. This was the most terrifying sword aura he had ever seen. Even the Windfire Thousand Feathers hadn't released such a terrifying sword aura when he used the blood-weeping sword Infant. He didn't expect there to be such a swordsman in the 9 major realms. "What's going on?" Gue Wuchan exclaimed in shock. "Oh my god, someone has activated the legend of Shinwu." Gongsun Xing reacted at the same time and exclaimed in shock and surprise. He could clearly see that the terrifying sword aura was released by the legend of Shinwu. The sword Dao inheritance left by the first divine sword master had finally been activated. Nie Tian's expression changed. So this sword aura was released by the legend of Shinwu. The sword aura from the first divine sword master was indeed very powerful. This sword aura alone showed that the first divine sword master's strength was definitely more terrifying than the Windfire Thousand Feathers. No wonder the Shinwu Sword Pagoda was able to suppress the One Alliance and the Two Alliances when the first divine sword master was alive. Nie Tian guessed that the first divine sword master was most likely the strongest person in the 9 major realms at that time. He just didn't know if Indra would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the first divine sword master if he recovered to his peak. Since Indra was the junior brother of the first divine sword master, their strength should be about the same. No one knew how such a peerless swordsman had died back then. Who is it that activated the legend of Shinwu? Gongsun Xing's eyes were trembling with excitement. That person has appeared. Third Lady Gongsun's voice was heard, but then she paused and said in shock, He seems to be." Third Lady Gongsun couldn't finish her sentence. "Wind, fire, ice." Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly when he saw the figure in the sky, and he called out the other party's name. At this moment, the person who appeared high up in the sky was none other than Wind, Fire, and Ice. "Wind, fire, ice. It's my grandson who triggered the legend of Shinwu." Gongsun Xing was stunned for a moment before he realized what was going on. He was so excited that tears streamed down his face. Although he had just reunited with Wind, Fire, and Ice, the kinship between them could not be severed. Of course he was happy that Wind, Fire, and Ice obtained the legend of Divine Martial. So, it's him. No wonder he could trigger the legend of Shinwu. Nie Tian calmed down and smiled. Wind, Flame, and Ice Greatsword's talent in the sword Dao was very high to begin with. Coupled with the blood-sobbing sword Nascent Soul's bloodline, it wasn't surprising that they could trigger the legend of Divine Martial. Nie Tian's reaction was very calm, but Jian Jingyun and Gui Wuchan's faces were gloomy. In fact, the two of them also had thoughts about the legend of Divine Martial, but their talent was not enough, and they were unable to activate it. Nie Tian wasn't interested at all, so he didn't even try. "Let's go." Nie Tian smiled and didn't plan to continue watching. It was none of his business anyway. Wait! But at this moment, Sakura stretched out his hand to stop Nyetian. Then, his figure moved and directly flew up into the sky. Nyetian's eyes slightly narrowed as he didn't know what Sakura was going to do. When the others saw a figure suddenly rushing over, they were also stunned, and their eyes trembled. High up in the sky, Sakura suddenly slashed out with his sword, blasting at the terrifying sword shadow in the sky. The mighty sword shadow suddenly trembled, and suddenly, a sword intent dissipated. Sakura's eyes and hands were sharp. He stretched out his palm and absorbed a part of the sword intent in the sword shadow. After doing this, Sakura's figure moved and directly returned to Nyetian's side. The others looked at Sakura in astonishment, not knowing what the latter was doing. Sakura only absorbed a bit of sword intent from the legend of Divine Martial, not knowing what he was going to do with this bit of sword intent. I'm going to use this sword intent to find Sikong Shwani. Sakura looked at Nyetian and transmitted his voice. Sikong Shwani? Nyetian was stunned and asked in astonishment, "Who is he?" "My senior brother, the first-generation Divine Sword Master." Sakura nodded deeply, then his figure moved and directly entered the realm Divine Boat. First-generation Divine Sword Master? Nyetian's eyes trembled, and he almost suspected that he heard wrong. Sakura actually wanted to find the first-generation Divine Sword Master. Could it be that the first-generation Divine Sword Master was still alive? Nyetian's face was full of shock, and he couldn't react for a long time. At this moment, Rui Qinyu also walked into the realm Divine Boat and said to Nyetian, "Nyetian, let's go." Nyetian reacted and didn't have time to say goodbye to the others. He flashed into the Divine Boat. The Divine Boat started moving, and the others' attention was still on wind, fire, and ice. After a while, Nyetian and the others walked out of the realm Divine Boat, and they were already in an unfamiliar world. This is the God-forbidding region. Nyetian was angered by the realm Divine Boat, and he looked around and smiled faintly. However, the next moment, his gaze landed on Sakura and he asked, "Sakura, what did you mean by what you said just now? Could it be that the first-generation Divine Sword Master is still alive?" Sakura had just said that he wanted to find the first-generation Divine Sword Master, Sikong Shwani. This was too strange, and it was practically impossible. If the first-generation Divine Sword Master was still alive, he would definitely be more than 1,000,000 years old, and this was already far beyond the limit of a peak paramount god's lifespan. Unless Sikong Shwani was like Sakura, and his soul was preserved, and he was later reborn. He's still alive. If I'm not wrong, he should have already returned to the Devil Abyss, Sakura replied cold, but it seemed like he didn't want to say too much to Nyetian. "Sakura, what exactly is going on?" Nyetian asked anxiously, a look of confusion on his face. "Nyetian, I can't tell you too much right now. Wait until we reach the Devil Abyss, then I'll tell you," Sakura replied, and then his figure flickered, and he flew into the distance. Nyetian looked helpless, but there was nothing he could do. He could only follow Sakura with Rui Qinyu. On the way, the three of them were silent. After a few hours, the three of them arrived outside a majestic ancient city. This was one of the three main cities of the God-forbidding region, Demon Sealing City. "We're finally here." Nyetian smiled faintly, and he pulled Rui Qinyu, and prepared to enter the city. However, at this time, Sakura's figure suddenly stopped, and he suddenly said, "After following us for so long, aren't you tired?" And Nyetian was stunned for a moment, and he turned around to look at the void, but he didn't find anything. "Sakura, who are you talking to?" Rui Qinyu's beautiful eyes flickered, and she couldn't help but ask. "Still not willing to show yourself?" Sakura smiled cold, and his eyes stared at the void with a murderous gaze. In the next moment, the void suddenly shook, and then a figure in black appeared, with an evil ghost mask on his face. "It's you!" When Nyetian saw that ghost mask, His eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "How is this possible?" Nie Tian was very familiar with this ghost mask. It was the swordsman he met on the Evil Edge sword competition, Evil Soul Remnant. Anyone could have a ghost mask, but that kind of aura wouldn't change. Nie Tian was very sure that the ghost mask martial artist in front of him was Evil Soul Remnant. Chapter 2044. The Evil Soul Remnant. When Nie Tian saw the ghost-masked warrior in the distance, his face stiffened. He had never expected that the Evil Soul Remnant would appear again. Back at the Evil Peak sword meet, he had seen the Evil Soul Remnant being killed by the level 9 Chaos Beast with one slap. Now, this person had appeared again. He could not believe his eyes. Nie Tian, are you surprised to see me again? The Evil Soul Remnant spoke. Its deep voice contained a hint of playfulness. Nie Tian calmed down and asked in a deep voice, "Who exactly are you?" "To tell you the truth, the guy you killed last time was just my puppet clone." The Evil Soul Remnant laughed coldly and said, "But I have to admit that your strength is beyond my expectations. If I had known, I would have done it myself. I wouldn't have to chase after you now." Puppet clone? Nie Tian was stunned. He looked very confused. He had never heard of such a thing. Judging from the Evil Soul Remnant's words, it seemed that the person Nie Tian had met back then was only a puppet clone. The latter's real body had not shown up at all. The person who had appeared in front of Nie Tian now was the real Evil Soul Remnant. What Nie Tian couldn't figure out was what a doppelganger was. Back when he had fought against the Phantasm Soul, that puppet clone had its own consciousness. Given Nie Tian's current strength, he could also condense a Sword Soul clone. Furthermore, it could have 90% of his strength. However, no matter how strong a Sword Soul clone was, it was just a clone. It could not have the consciousness of the original body. However, the Evil Soul Remnant's puppet clone was different. It was a clone with its own consciousness. This was too incredible. Nie Tian stood rooted to the ground, looking very confused. At that moment, even Fat Cat was silent. It seemed like she did not know what a puppet clone was. "Are you surprised?" The Evil Soul Remnant life sneered, and its cold eyes exuded a chilling aura. It was like a venomous wolf hiding in the dark night, ready to unleash its most terrifying attack at any moment. Evil Soul Remnant life. "If my guess is correct, you should be a member of an island, right?" Nie Tian faintly smiled. His expression became calm as he spoke indifferently. "That's right." The Evil Soul Remnant laughed and said, "I'm indeed a member of the Reverse Scale, and I'm the leader of the 13 Reverse Scale Thorns. He is the scariest killer among all the Reverse Scales." "Really?" Nie Tian chuckled. Soon after, his gaze turned provocative as he said, "I really want to see how strong your real body is compared to your puppet avatar." Nie Tian appeared very calm on the surface, but he was very cautious in his heart. His divine sense swept over, but he couldn't perceive the evil soul's true strength. What made him feel even more strange was that he felt a very familiar aura from the Evil Soul Remnant life, especially the latter's eyes, which were inexplicably familiar. "Nie Tian, you are very arrogant, and you have the right to be arrogant. Unfortunately, the person you met is me. Today you will die for sure." The ghost mask on the Evil Soul Remnant life's face trembled, and an endless black aura emanated from its body. A thick black fog surged in the void enveloping its body. It seemed that even the Evil Soul Remnant life himself had turned into a black aura. This aura. Seeing this, Nie Tian couldn't help but tremble, and his expression changed. At that moment, he felt a very familiar aura from the Evil Soul Remnant life. This aura was the aura of the 8th other pupil, the Eye of the Devil's Night. The Eye of the Devil's Night. Wasn't that Dugunni's eye? Why did it appear on the Evil Soul Remnant life? "It's very familiar, isn't it? Does it remind you of your old friend?" The Evil Soul Remnant life's cold laughter rang out, echoing in the void, as if it had come from hell. "It turns out that all of Dugunni's belongings are in your hands. Nie Tian calmed down, and a strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. When he had killed Duguanai, a man had appeared and taken everything from Duguanai, including the eye of the Devil's Knight, half of the Evening Blade's flame, and the saint's arm that Duguanai had obtained from Shui Wushuang. Now it seemed that the man who had appeared must be from Ni Lin. Back then, I sent a puppet doppelganger to follow Duguanai, because I knew that he would die in your hands sooner or later. Since he is already dead, of course, all of his belongings are mine. The evil soul remnant life sneered, and then its body moved, turning into a terrible black light, directly attacking Nie Tian. Watch out. At the same time, Deshir Tian's voice sounded, and he directly stabbed out with his sword. The vast and mighty sword shadow fell from the sky and blocked the attack of the evil soul. Evil soul remnant life blurted in surprise as he was forced back several hundred meters. Never could he have guessed that the ordinary-looking Sakra heaven would be so strong. Nie Tian was also taken aback. Looking over at Sakra heaven, he smiled and murmured, "So, Sakra heaven is a mid-paramount god." Before Nie Tian knew it, he had reached the mid-paramount god level, which came as a bit of a surprise. "Back up, Nie Tian," Sakra heaven said coldly, gesturing for Nie Tian to back up. "You're not a match for him." Nie Tian nodded and backed up. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that he wasn't a match for the evil soul remnant life. Although he hadn't fought the evil soul remnant life yet, based on its attack, Nie Tian could tell that he wasn't a match for it. Nie Tian was fairly certain that the evil soul remnant life was a late paramount god, or even a peak one. Thankfully, the person who had appeared in Evil Edge's sword duel had only been a puppet clone of the evil soul remnant life. If Nie Tian wanted to fight it, he would have to use the Nine-Spirit Chaos Beast to have a chance at victory. Unfortunately, he couldn't afford to use it right now. What a strange little doll. The evil soul remnant life's voice echoed out through the air, and it seemed to contain some sort of strange magic that would strike at the heart of anyone who heard it. Nie Tian knew that the evil soul remnant life could use his sword will to create illusions, and was a very difficult opponent to deal with. "Sakra, you have to be careful of his sword intent." Nie Tian was a little worried about Sakra and reminded him loudly, "Why don't you worry about yourself instead of others, you brat?" However, even as the words left his mouth, a cold, murderous voice echoed out, and 3 black-robed figures appeared, surrounding Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu. Chapter 2045. As Nie Tian hovered there, he looked at the 3 black-garbed men, and couldn't help but gasp. Shockingly, all 3 of them were mid-paramount gods. "Old Second, you guys go kill this brat. He's got a lot of good stuff on him." On the other side, the voice of the evil soul's remnant life resounded, "But don't hurt his martial body, I need his complete martial body, only then can I use the spirit-absorbing formation to extract his origin spirit." Nie Tian murmured. He hadn't expected the Phantasm Soul Remnant to want his nascent spirit. It seemed that the Phantasm Soul Remnant's puppet clone had been killed by a 9th-level Chaos Beast with a single palm strike. That had left a deep impression on him. "What's so good about the nascent spirit of an over-god, boss? Just let me rip him to shreds." One of the black-garbed men laughed viciously. "Old Second," the Phantasm Soul Remnant said, "his nascent spirit is different from the others. It's very strong. I have to get it." Hearing their conversation, Nie Tian couldn't help but laugh coldly. "It seems you really think of me as a little sheep that you can bully as you please." "I don't know if you're a little sheep, kid," the Phantasm Soul Remnant said. "But in front of me, Lang Sha, even if you're a tiger, you'll still have to be a little sheep." The black-garbed man who Phantasm Soul Remnant referred to as Old Second grinned, and then his eyes turned a strange, crimson color. Nie Tian guessed that the 3 black-garbed men in front of him were also part of the 13 reverse scale spikes, which was why they called each other Old Second. The black-garbed man named Lang Sha radiated a violent aura, and his crimson eyes made him seem especially bloodthirsty and ruthless. "Second brother, we'll leave this brat to you. Leave the little girl to us." The other black-garbed man chuckled as he looked at Rui Qianyu with undisguised vulgarity. "All right." Lang Sha nodded. His blood-red eyes stared fixedly at Nie Tian, emanating an extremely bloody aura. "You're courting death." Nie Tian's face darkened, and his expression turned murderous. These people had spoken disrespectfully to Rui Qianyu, and they had touched his reverse scale. "You're the one who's going to die." Lang Sha chuckled, and then his figure flickered as he pounced on Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He had never seen a godly realm cultivator act in such a way before. It was as if Lang Sha was going to fight him. Without any hesitation, he activated the three forbidden technique. His aura skyrocketed to the extreme as he slashed out with his sword. Suddenly, a terrifying sword shadow blasted towards Lang Sha. The sharp sword chi surged thousands of meters away. However, Lang Sha was like a wild beast. He ignored Nie Tian's attack and rushed over. In the next moment, the sword shadow descended, and a strange scene occurred. Lang Sha directly passed through the sword shadow, and his whole body was like a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, he was less than 10 meters away from Nie Tian and directly punched. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He activated the Star Soul Shield. However, the moment Lang Sha's fist landed, the Star Soul Shield shattered, and Nie Tian's figure flew out. In midair, he opened his Star Soul wings. His wings flapped in the air, and only then did he manage to stabilize his figure. Blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. What a powerful martial body! Nie Tian frowned and his expression couldn't help but change. He never imagined that Lang Sha's martial physique would actually be strong to such an extent. It was simply unbelievable. Just from the strength of the martial body, Lang Sha's martial body was even stronger than Nie Tian's. Using his physical body to pass through Nie Tian's sword shadow was a little scary. After Lang Sha injured Nie Tian with a punch, his eyes narrowed, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said coldly, "Stinking brat, I didn't expect your martial body to be so strong. You didn't die after taking my punch head-on." Although Lang Sha's punch looked ordinary, it contained an extremely terrifying power. Fortunately, Nie Tian had activated the Star Soul Shield, and his martial body was also very strong. Otherwise, even if he didn't die, he would have been seriously injured. And I Lin's people are really not simple. Nie Tian became cold. He turned and saw Sakra Heaven and the Phantasm Soul Remnant fighting hard in the sky. They were actually evenly matched. At this time, Nie Tian realized that the Phantasm Soul Remnant was indeed not an ordinary person. How could someone who could fight Sakra Heaven face to face be so simple? Although Sakra Heaven's strength was only at the mid-stage of the Supreme God realm, his battle strength was enough to threaten ordinary peak Supreme God experts. The fact that the Phantasm Soul Remnant could fight him head-on showed how strong he was. At the very least, the current Nie Tian was not a match for the Phantasm Soul Remnant. On the other side, Rui Qianyu was fighting with two men in black. Although she couldn't kill them, she wasn't at a disadvantage either. "I have to finish this guy as soon as possible." Nie Tian stared at Lang Sha and thought to himself. He wanted to kill Lang Sha first, then help Rui Qianyu. "Brat, your strength has amazed me. However, that's all there is to it." Lang Sha coldly smiled. Immediately after, he charged over. Nie Tian knew how strong the Lang Sha martial body was. The wings on his back shook and he directly retreated several thousand meters. However, Lang Sha's speed was also very fast. In the blink of an eye, he directly caught up to Nie Tian. Nie Tian attacked again. He slashed out with his sword, and the sword's shadow was like a mountain, crazily smashing towards Lang Sha. Lang Sha, who was in midair, seemed to feel the power of Nie Tian's sword. His body trembled slightly, and in an instant, he turned into a giant black wolf. Huh! Nye Tian looked at the giant black wolf in midair, and his eyes couldn't help but narrow. Beast man. At the same time, Fat Cat's voice rang out, and there was a hint of fear in it. At this moment, the giant black wolf directly broke through the sword's shadow in the air. Its giant claws danced, and with one swipe, several cold sharp lights in the air broke through the air, sweeping towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian's reaction was extremely fast. The wings on his back shook and he dodged the attack. Brat, you're not bad. You actually forced me to use my original body. The giant black wolf stepped in the air, and a pair of blood-red eyes stared at Nye Tian, and said in a deep voice. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he already understood. No wonder Lang Sha's martial body was so strong, far surpassing warriors of the same level. It turned out that he was not a human, but a beast man. Of course, Nye Tian had heard of the beast man. It was rumored that this was a very cruel race. Every beast man had a strong original body, just like the original soul of human warriors. Before stepping into the divine state, beastmen could only exist in the form of their original bodies. Only after stepping into the divine state could they have a human form. The most terrifying thing about beastmen was their powerful beast body, martial body, which was even more terrifying than the beast body of a divine beast. The reason why Lang Sha's martial body was so strong was because he was a beastman. Chapter 2046. Nye Tian knew that although beastfolk martial bodies were powerful, there were limits to their defenses. As long as he could break through those limits, beastfolk weren't that terrifying. Although his first few attacks hadn't hurt Wolfslayer, he hadn't even used his full strength. Nye Tian. At that moment, Raindrop Thousand Leaves' voice suddenly rang out. Under the combined attacks of the two black-robed men, she could no longer hold on. Damn it! Seeing this, Nye Tian roared inwardly. You want to be distracted in a fight with me, you stinking brat? With an explosive roar, Lang Sha's enormous body sprinted towards Nye Tian like a bolt of black lightning. Since you're looking to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Nye Tian floated there in the air, his eyes cold, his sword intent pulsing with a somber, murderous aura. In the next moment, he moved. He raised the starry heavenly slash in his hand and a dark sword intent suddenly surged out of his body. It instantly condensed in the air and slashed out. Immediately, a terrifying black sword shadow appeared and attacked the black wolf. The giant black wolf's figure was like lightning, but when he sensed the terrifying sword force in the air, his body suddenly paused, and his crimson eyes trembled, revealing unconcealable panic. At this moment, Lang Sha felt threatened, a very real aura of death. Never could he have imagined that Nye Tian would suddenly unleash such terrifying sword intent. It was a sword intent that left him shaken, trembling, and terrified. Nye Tian had used the Devil God sword intent to increase the power of his sword intent by several-fold. Combined with his mid-paramount god strength, it was enough to pose a fatal threat to Wolfslayer. Now that Nye Tian had activated his 3 forbidden magics, his strength had skyrocketed to the middle paramount god level, which was an entire major stage higher than before. Wolfslayer suddenly sensed the danger and let out a howl of pain. His body stiffened as he tried to flee. Unfortunately for him, it was too late. A huge black sword shadow poured down like a waterfall, and the space immediately became dark. Like a huge bolt of black lightning, the moment the Godfiend's sword shadow fell, a bloody curtain appeared between heaven and earth. The air was immediately filled with the smell of blood. That giant black wolf was actually directly cut into two. Under the impact of the sword will, the huge body exploded into a bloody mist. Lang Sha, the second strongest expert of the 13 reverse scale stings, had died without understanding how Nye Tian's sword intent had suddenly become so terrifying. Beastmen? Just SOSO. Nye Tian killed Lang Sha with a single strike. Cold curled up the corners of his mouth, his eyes filled with disdain. On the other side, When the evil soul remnant saw Lang Sha being killed by Nie Tian, it couldn't help but cry out, "Second bro." The other two black-clothed men were equally terrified, and their expressions were horrified. They originally thought that Lang Sha had sufficient strength to kill Nie Tian, but they never imagined that he would be killed by Nie Tian with a single sword strike instead. "Your turn." Nie Tian suddenly turned around, his cold gaze locked onto the two black-clothed men. Violet Eye Eclipse. At that moment, Rui Qinyu took advantage of the opportunity and opened her 9-color eyes. Violet Eye Bloodline power surged out, transforming into a terrifying streak of violet light that slashed down. One of the black-clothed men didn't even have time to react before dying a horrible death. Seeing this, the other black-clothed man suddenly cried out in alarm, but at this moment, Nie Tian's sword shadow had already arrived. The black-clothed man was swallowed up by the sword shadow, and not even his bones remained. In the blink of an eye, Lang Sha and the other two black-clothed men were all dead. Damn it! Upon seeing this, the phantasm soul let out a furious roar and shot a vicious look at Nie Tian. Immediately afterwards, a black vortex appeared in his palm and rapidly expanded. Then, he took a step forward and disappeared into the vortex. Sakura saw that the evil soul remnant had suddenly disappeared and wanted to chase after it, but he was stopped by Nie Tian. "He's gone far." Nie Tian looked in the direction where the evil soul remnant had disappeared and said indifferently. He had seen this kind of escape method many times from Duguanai. He used the pupil of Devil's Night to create a spacetime vortex, and as long as the situation was not serious, he would enter the spacetime vortex and leave. Nie Tian, this person's sword essence is very strange. It seems to contain some kind of terrifying spiritual attack, which is a great threat to people's mind. If you run into him again, you'll have to be extra careful, Sakura warned Nie Tian in a deep voice. In fact, with his strength, he was completely not afraid of the evil soul remnant, but he was afraid of the spiritual attack in the latter's sword essence, so he had to be distracted, which led to him not being able to kill the latter. If it was an ordinary swordsman with sword essence, Sakura would have killed it directly. "I know." Nie Tian smiled faintly. He had already experienced the evil soul remnant's sword of incubus, so of course he knew how terrifying the latter was. The evil soul remnant escaping was also within Nie Tian's expectations. The evil soul remnant was somewhat similar to Duguanai. They were both the kind of people with strength, talent, and enough cunning. It would be strange if such a person died directly. Although the evil soul remnant escaped, Lang Sha and the others died in the hands of Nie Tian and Rui Qinyu. With the evil soul remnant's character, it would certainly not give up, and it would definitely appear again. Right now, the most important thing for Nie Tian was not the evil soul remnant, but the trip to the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss. The trip to the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss not only concerned the recovery of Cher's memories, but also the matter of the dragon's spring vein. Right now, Nie Tian had a faint premonition that it was extremely likely that he would see the legendary dragon's spring vein in this trip to the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss. "Qianyu, are you alright?" Nie Tian's figure flashed, and he arrived beside Rui Qinyu, asking with concern. "I'm fine." Rui Qinyu smiled faintly. Although she was in a bit of danger just now, she was not injured. Nie Tian nodded, and he looked towards the demon ceiling city, preparing to enter immediately. Right at this moment, Nie Tian seemed to sense something. He couldn't help but frown, and he looked towards the void in the distance. Then, the void trembled slightly, and several figures appeared high up in the sky. When Nie Tian saw one of them, his eyes narrowed, and he murmured a name, Lai Yin Jiufeng. One of the figures that had appeared in front of Nie Tian was none other than Lai Yin Jiufeng. "Long time no see, Nie Tian," Lai Yin Jiufeng said, noticing Nie Tian as well. He appeared in front of Nie Tian in a flash and looked playfully at Nie Tian. Lai Yin Jiufeng, It seems that you've grown much stronger since we parted ways in the forbidden land of 9 infants. Nie Tian smiled faintly, and when he swept his divine sense over Lai Yin Jiufeng, he was quite surprised. Right now, Lai Yin Jiufeng was already an early paramount god. Neither Lai Yin Jiufeng nor Cher were ordinary people, so their growth and strength couldn't be judged by normal standards. Although Lai Yin Jiufeng was very strong right now, it was still within Nie Tian's tolerance range. Then, Nie Tian turned to look at the 2 people next to Lai Yin Jiufeng, and he couldn't help but frown in confusion. These 2 people looked different from ordinary people. Their facial features were far more exquisite than a human's, and their eyes were deep blue. Their ears were pointed. Chapter 2047. As Nie Tian looked at the 2 people beside Lai Yin Jiufeng, he suddenly heard Fat Cat's cry. His eyes narrowed and he thought, ancient era's elves. They really aren't humans. In fact, Nie Tian could also see that the appearance of the 2 people in front of him was similar to that of the elves. However, he found that their facial features were more delicate and exquisite than that of ordinary elves. Moreover, their deep blue eyes were especially deep, giving people a feeling that they were bottomless. At that moment, the 2 ancient era's elves were also examining Nie Tian and the others with serious gazes. They first looked at Sakura and Rui Qianyu with slightly surprised gazes. However, when their gazes landed on Nie Tian, their gazes immediately changed. They became slightly strange and even somewhat disdainful. However, Nie Tian did not think much of it. He was already mentally prepared. After all, compared to Sakura and Rui Qianyu, at least on the surface, he was not as talented as the latter 2. This was especially true for Sakura. Anyone who saw him would be shocked. Lai Yin Jiufeng, is he the person you're waiting for? One of the 2 ancient era's elves asked in a cold manner. His gaze wandered around Nie Tian. It was clear that he harbored ill intentions. That's right, 3rd Prince. He is Nie Tian. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly. He seemed to be very polite. Humph humph. Suddenly, the man referred to as the 3rd Prince by Lai Yin Jiufeng sneered. He no longer concealed the disdain in his eyes. He looked at Nie Tian fearlessly and said mockingly, "Are you joking with this prince? This prince has waited here for half a month. Is it all for a mid-over-god trash?" Nie Tian could not help but frown when he heard the 3rd Prince's words. However, he was able to maintain his calm and did not do anything. Originally, he had thought that the ancient era's elves were discerning people. However, it would appear that they were merely short-sighted. He did not want to lower himself to the level of a fool like that. "Your Royal Highness, his name is Nie Tian. You still don't know him. He may not look very strong, but his combat power is definitely beyond your imagination," Lai Yin Jiufeng explained calmly. He knew Nie Tian very well. Lai Yin Jiufeng was extremely shocked to see Nie Tian again. He never imagined that Nie Tian would grow so quickly. The reason his strength had risen so quickly was because he had the meridians of 3 lives, and because he was an ancient Ming, he had a special method. However, Nie Tian was just an ordinary martial artist. Even if he had a god-fiend nascent embryo, he shouldn't have been able to increase his strength so quickly. In fact, Lai Yin Jiufeng felt that he might not even be a match for Nie Tian right now. Lai Yin Jiufeng didn't think much of Sakura. He could tell with a single glance that he was an expert who had reincarnated. Although Sakura's body had been reconstructed, there was still a difference between the reconstructed body and the original body of a martial artist. Lai Yin Jiufeng could tell this very easily. Rui Qianyu, on the other hand, surprised Lai Yin Jiufeng quite a bit. He could sense a powerful aura of slaughter from her. The aura even made him feel threatened. Right now, Rui Qianyu had not completely fused with the inheritance of slaughter. Her control over the aura of slaughter had not reached a level where she could control it as she pleased. She was unable to hide the aura of slaughter within her perfectly. As a result, Lai Yin Jiufeng could sense the aura of slaughter within her. "It's beyond my imagination?" The 3rd Prince sneered. Clearly, He did not believe Lai Yinjufeng's words. He said scornfully, "He's just a piece of trash who's only a mid-over-god. Even if he's a supreme genius, his battle prowess is only at peak overgod at most. I can kill him with a single strike." With that, the third prince looked at Lai Yinjufeng and said coldly, "If we've waited for so long just for him, then I really wonder if your ancient Ming doesn't want to participate in the competition of the 9 races." "How's that possible?" Lai Yinjufeng laughed and said, "The competition of the 9 races has always been a tradition of the 9 primordial races. Even if our ancient Ming has declined, we will never give up on the competition of the 9 races." "Is that so?" The third prince sneered and studied Nie Tian disdainfully. He said, "With just a piece of trash like him, it's fine if you don't participate in the competition of the 9 races." Nie Tian watched on quietly from one side. He was in no hurry to prove anything. In his eyes, there was no need to take an idiot seriously at all. "Nie Tian, I'm going back to the 9 extremities first," Sakura said indifferently as he could not stand it any longer. He prepared to enter the 9 extremities. Nie Tian nodded slightly. It was good for Sakura to return to the 9 extremities first. "Wait!" But at this moment, the voice of the third prince sounded. A pair of cold eyes sized up Disher Tian, and said with a provocative expression, "Little kid, although this guy called Nie Tian is a trash, your strength is not bad. This prince would like to experience it." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he heard the third prince's words. He immediately looked at Sakura, wanting him to calm down. The third prince's strength was not weak. He was already an early-stage paramount god, so he appeared very arrogant. However, he provoked Nie Tian. Nie Tian could tolerate it, but it was different for him to provoke Sakura. Given Sakura's character, how could he indulge him? Swish! As expected, the third prince hadn't even finished speaking when a fierce sword insight tore through the sky like a bolt of lightning, and it was swift to the extreme. Before anyone could react, a bloody sword mark had appeared on the third prince's face, and it was deep to the bone while blood flowed from it. In an instant, half of the third prince's face was dyed red with blood. "Idiot!" Sakura directly left a sword mark on the third prince's face. Then, without looking at the latter, he said coldly, and his figure moved, returning to the 9 extremities. At this time, the third prince finally reacted. His mouth was wide open, and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. He was completely dumbfounded. He had never imagined that Sakura would dare to directly attack him, and leave a most humiliating sword mark on his face. To him, this was a great humiliation. Who was he? He was the noble third prince. How could he be humiliated like this? Lai Yinjufeng was also stunned. He did not expect Sakura's attack to be so fierce. Even he did not see the trajectory of the sword will. Son of a bitch! Suddenly, the third prince finally exploded. His entire face instantly became ferocious, like a wild beast that had reached the limit of its fury. Unfortunately, Sakura's figure had already disappeared. With Sakura's status, he would not accompany an idiot to mess around. Nie Tian looked at the third prince and sneered. "You should not be angry now. You should be glad. If the sword had landed on your neck instead of your face, you would have been a corpse by now." Sakura's action seemed ruthless, but he was actually showing mercy. With his strength, if he really wanted to kill the third prince, the latter would not be able to survive even if he had 100 lives. Chapter 2048. The rage that the third prince had been suppressing suddenly erupted. His deep blue eyes shone with a cold light. He was tempted to skin Nie Tian alive. He was not Sakura Tian's opponent, and he had been humiliated by him. All he could do was vent his rage on Nie Tian. In the blink of an eye, the third prince's silhouette moved. He threw a punch straight out and a sharp gust of wind blew. It was like a steel blade, and an ear-piercing sound could be heard in the air. "You're looking to die." Nie Tian furrowed his brows and let out a low roar. He directly activated his 3 forbidden techniques, and a terrifying sword aura rose around him. A black sword shadow whizzed out like a sharp arrow. Spurt! In the next moment, the sound of flesh being cut rang out. A deep slash appeared on the other half of the third prince's face. It was even more obvious and bloody than the one on his face. Arg! The third prince immediately let out a strange cry as he moved. He was like a dog that had its tail stepped on. He staggered backwards a few steps before stabilizing himself. Then, he looked at Nye Tian with a shocked expression. Apart from astonishment, there was also fear and terror in his eyes. He had never thought that a cultivator who was only a mid-over god would be able to erupt with such terrifying sword intent in a single moment. In fact, he hadn't even noticed that Nye Tian had reached the mid-paramount god level just now. However, Nye Tian had already recovered his strength. He looked at the third prince indifferently. He did not want to fight, but the third prince was just too arrogant. He had no choice but to fight. If it were not for Lai Yanjiufeng's attitude towards the third prince, Nye Tian's attack would have taken his life. Although Nye Tian had not killed the third prince, he had taught him a great lesson. He had left another slash on his face. Moreover, he had used the sword intent of the demons and gods. It would probably take a few months for the third prince's wound to disappear. Where did this mad dog come from, Lai Yanjiufeng? Nye Tian could not be bothered to look at the third prince. He turned around and asked Lai Yanjiufeng, "Bastard! Do you know who you're talking to?" When the third prince was called a mad dog by Nye Tian, he immediately roared in anger. However, after seeing how powerful Nye Tian was, he did not dare to make a move. He only dared to roar. Mu Tuo, step down. At this moment, the other elf woman who had been silent all this while finally spoke. Her voice was very calm, but it revealed a sense of dignity that could not be defied. Third Prince Mu Tuo raised his head and glanced at the elf woman. His eyes were filled with unwillingness, but he did not dare to be arrogant and obediently retreated. The elf woman raised the corner of her mouth and faintly smiled. She sized up Nye Tian and lightly said, "I'm Mu Shi, the 9th princess of the Greenwood Empire of the Nine-Li Demon Domain. The person you just taught a lesson to is called Mu Tuo, the 3rd prince of the Greenwood Empire. Mu Tuo was rash and impetuous. Please forgive me if I have offended you in any way." With that, the elf princess who called herself Mu Shi bowed slightly as an apology to Nye Tian. "Your Highness, you're too kind." Nye Tian faintly smiled and seemed indifferent. He wouldn't be so attentive just because Mu Shi was pretty and could speak. He could tell with a glance that this elf woman called Mu Shi was absolutely an extremely powerful character. At the very least, she was much more shrewd than that idiot called Mu Tuo. Mu Shi had also seen Nye Tian reveal his extremely powerful battle prowess, so she took the initiative to apologize. Otherwise, she would absolutely watch as Nye Tian was beaten to death by Mu Tuo. This world was like this. Strength was everything. Only with strength would one have the right to speak and win the respect of others. Without strength, no one would care about you even if you shouted at the top of your lungs. Mu Tuo apologized to young Master Nye Tian. Mu Shi faintly smiled, then turned around and said to Mu Tuo behind her. Mu Tuo stilled, as if he suspected that he had heard wrong. He looked in shock at Mu Shi, but when he saw the undeniable determination in the latter's eyes, he still took a step forward and looked resentfully at Nye Tian. He said stiffly, "So sorry. Third Prince, I know you are very angry right now, but I must still advise you. In the future, when you face people you do not know, it is best to restrain yourself. Fortunately, the person you met today was me. Otherwise, you would not have lost your dignity, but your life." Nye Tian faintly smiled. After saying this, he ignored Mu Tuo. Mu Tuo's face flushed red. He wanted to say something, but he held back. "Young Master Nye Tian is right. I thank you on behalf of Mu Tuo." Mu Shi smiled calmly, then turned around to look at Lai Yanjiufeng. She said, Let's return first. All right. Lai Yin Jiufeng nodded slightly and led the group in the direction of Demon Ceiling City. A while later, Nie Tian and the others arrived at a unique little courtyard. Under Lai Yin Jiufeng's lead, they entered the hall. Everyone sat down in the hall. Lai Yin Jiufeng and Princess Mu Shi sat on the left and right seats respectively. Nie Tian and the others sat on the guest seats below them. Nie Tian was very puzzled. From Mu Shi's description, she should be Mu Tuo's younger sister. Why was her status so much higher than Mu Tuo's? At the very least, Nie Tian could clearly see that Mu Tuo was like a little follower in front of Mu Shi. Young Master Nie Tian, do you know what you are going to do next? Mu Shi did not waste words and asked Nie Tian directly. Nie Tian shook his head, indicating that he did not know. He had only heard from Earth Chief that they were going to enter a place called the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss. As for what they were going to do there, Earth Chief had not said in detail. However, when Nie Tian heard Mu Tuo say something about the competition of the 9 races and the 9 races of the ancient era, he had a faint guess. Young Master Nie Tian, our goal this time is to enter the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss and participate in the competition of the 9 races. Mu Shi did not hide anything and said, the Myriad Degrees Demon Abyss is not in the 9 regions. It is in another realm, the Jiuli Demon Realm. However, the Jiuli Demon Realm is slightly different from the realms you know of. I hope that you are mentally prepared. Nie Tian nodded with a smile and waited for Mu Shi to continue. Mu Shi paused for a moment before continuing. The so-called struggle of the 9 clans is actually an agreement made by the 9 ancient clans a long time ago. It is actually a competition between the 9 clans, and the one who wins can obtain the right to rule the 9 demon region for 10,000 years. So that's how it is. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. He then said, 9th Princess, which 9 races are you referring to by the 9 races of the ancient era? Are the ancient Ming and your race part of the 9 races of the ancient era? Yes. Mu Shi nodded and said, the ancient Ming and my race, the Wood Elves, are both part of the 9 races of the ancient era. Our 2 races are allies in the competition of the 9 races. Allies? Nie Tian went blank for a moment, confused. Chapter 2049. The struggle of the 9 races meant that the 9 races could ally with each other. This was something that surprised Nie Tian. Mu Shi nodded with a smile and said, during the struggle of the 9 races, there were 3 factions. The alliance between the Wood Elves and the ancient Ming is one of them. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he said with a smile, so there are 2 other forces, right? Yes, but you don't need to know too much right now. You only need to know that you are representing the Wood Elves and the ancient Ming. Mu Shi smiled faintly. Her deep blue eyes flashed with a gentle light that gave people a very tempting feeling. Nie Tian nodded with a smile. He was in no hurry. In any case, he was going to enter the 9 demon realm soon. He would get to the bottom of everything. Moreover, what he cared about was not the struggle of the 9 races, but how to help Cher recover her memories and find the dragon's spring vein. Sir Nie Tian, is there anything else you want to know? Mu Shi smiled faintly and asked Nie Tian. Nie Tian shook his head and thought, you won't tell me what I want to know. All right, since it's like this, we will leave for the 9 demon realm tomorrow morning. Mu Shi stood up and bowed slightly to Nie Tian before leaving with Mu Tuo. Nie Tian looked at the back of the elf siblings and couldn't help but smile. Nie Tian, prepare yourself. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled and indicated that Nie Tian could leave. Nie Tian thought for a moment and said, is Cher not coming with us to the 9 demon realm? Of course not. What you need to do is bring back something for her and help her recover her memories. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly and raised his eyebrows. What thing? Nie Tian asked with a frown when he saw Lai Yin Jiufeng's mysterious expression. I can't tell you right now. You'll know once we enter the Jiuli demon realm. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled. There was a strange smile in his eyes. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he had a bad premonition. After leaving the hall, Nie Tian and the others arrived at a small courtyard Lai Yin Jiufeng had arranged for them. Nie Tian entered the room, but his expression was not good. There were too many questions in his heart, and what Lai Yin Jiufeng had said made him feel even heavier. He really wanted to know what Lai Yin Jiufeng was talking about that could help Shui recover her memories. Lil Fei, how much do you know about the ancient Era's elves? At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly recalled the ancient Era's elves and asked. When little Fat Cat saw the siblings earlier, it seemed to be very surprised. Nie Tian. Fat Cat appeared. She said with a serious expression, the ancient elves were wiped out in the war between races a long time ago. I didn't expect them to still exist. The Dragon Rebel clan wiped out the ancient elves? Nie Tian couldn't help but ask. According to his knowledge, many races were wiped out by the Dragon Rebel clan in the ancient era. Even the most powerful Divine Dragon clan was wiped out by the Dragon Rebel clan, much less the ancient elves. Amen, Fat Cat nodded. Then, she smiled and said, but it seems that the ancient elves were not wiped out at all. It's possible that they escaped to the Ninely Demon realm. This Exalted One is very curious. What kind of place is the Ninely Demon realm? Why have I never heard of it? Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed. He hadn't expected that there were realms other than the 9 realms that existed. Fat, are the ancient elves very powerful? Asked Nie Tian when he recalled Lai Yin Jiufeng's attitude toward Mu Shi and her brother. From Lai Yin Jiufeng's attitude, he seemed to be very respectful toward Mu Shi and her brother. This undoubtedly meant that the ancient elves were very powerful. Amen. Fat Cat nodded and said, the talent of the elves has always been above that of humans. As for the ancient elves, they are even more powerful than ordinary elves. Even the ordinary elves are much more talented than the so-called geniuses of the human race. What's even more terrifying is that the ancient elves possess an almost unlimited lifespan. That's why peak paramount god experts are very common among the ancient elves. Then, he said, in that case, the ancient Era's elves should be much more powerful than the humans. In that case, why did they choose to hide in the Jili demon domain instead of returning to the 9 realms to regain their authority over them? This Exalted One doesn't understand that either. Fat Cat shook her head and said, however, this Exalted One knows that the ancient elves are separated into 5 great races. They are the Golden Elves, the Wood Elves, the Water Elves, the Fire Elves and the Earth Elves. All the elves that appeared after that are branches of the 5 great elves. They are not pure ancient elves. Nie Tian nodded and said with a smile, it seems that the wood elves we met are only one of the 5 great elves. Nie Tian, you must be careful when you enter the Ninely Demon realm. Those ancient elves are extremely hostile toward humans. Furthermore, their strength is not something that ordinary human cultivators can compare to. Fat Cat frowned and warned Nie Tian. I know. Nie Tian nodded and smiled. His eyes were filled with great confidence. The next day, Nie Tian and Rui Qinyu arrived at the hall early in the morning. Lai Yin Jiufeng and the others were already waiting for them. Nie Tian looked at the hall from afar and his gaze was immediately attracted by a figure. This figure was none other than someone he was familiar with, Sacred Sword Song Lan. Why is it him? Nie Tian frowned. He never imagined that Song Lan would appear here. Song Lan was a member of the Holy Parliament. Why would he appear beside Lai Yin Jiufeng? At this moment, Lai Yin Jiufeng and the others walked over. They looked at Nie Tian with a faint smile and said, Nie Tian, I believe you already know Song Lan. There's no need for me to introduce him. Nie Tian regained his calm and smiled. He said, Song Lan, I didn't expect you to appear here as well. I also didn't expect that the person His Highness was waiting for would be you. Song Lan's expression was a bit awkward when he saw Nie Tian again. He said with a stiff expression, Nie Tian, don't be too surprised. Song Lan is indeed the sacred sword Song Lan of the Holy Parliament. However, that is only his identity on the surface. His true identity is actually a member of our inescapable net. Lai Yanjiufeng smiled. He seemed very proud of himself. Nie Tian couldn't help but curl his lip. He didn't seem to care, but he was extremely shocked and speechless. The sacred sword Song Lan that the Holy Parliament was so proud of was actually a member of the inescapable net. How ironic. He wondered what Hua Jioshan and Nangong Duxiu's expressions would be if they knew this. Chapter 2050. A while later, Nie Tian and the others appeared in a barren land outside Demon Ceiling City. Nie Tian looked around and frowned. This place was desolate and barren. Could it be that the entrance to the Ninely Demon Realm was here? Don't be in such a hurry. Lai Yanjiufeng shot Nie Tian a glance before smiling faintly. Following that, Mu Shi and Mu Tuo walked in front and quickly brought everyone into a thistle thicket. This is the place. Mu Shi suddenly stopped and her lips curled up. Then, she formed a strange seal with her hands. Rays of green light appeared and flowed through the air. Then, space sensed it and a powerful spacetime whirlpool appeared. It quickly condensed into a spacetime whirlpool several meters wide. Nie Tian was stunned by the scene in front of him. He hadn't thought that a spacetime whirlpool was hidden in this inconspicuous place. Everyone, please enter. Mu Shi smiled and motioned for everyone to enter the spacetime whirlpool. Lai Yanjiufeng didn't stand on ceremony at all. He stepped in and disappeared into the spacetime whirlpool. Nie Tian and the others followed after him. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. When Mu Shi's figure finally disappeared, the spacetime whirlpool disappeared as well. The space returned to normal as if nothing had happened. At the same time, Nie Tian and the others arrived in a completely unfamiliar world. The moment he entered the Jili Demon Realm, Nie Tian felt an extremely cool and refreshing aura coming towards him. It made his entire body feel incomparably comfortable, and all the pores on his body opened up. What a dense aura of divine intent power! Nie Tian immediately reacted and was surprised. The aura of divine intent power here was far denser than in the 9 realms. Cultivating in this environment was comparable to cultivating in the divine gathering formation. However, as he felt the dense divine intent power, Nie Tian also felt a strong spacetime pressure. It was also much stronger than the spacetime pressure in the 9 realms. The concentration of bright spirit power in the Jili demon region is more than 10 times higher than the upper realm of the 9 regions. At this moment, Mu Shi said, "Furthermore, the spacetime stability here is very high, so you will feel a very strong spacetime pressure." I see. Nie Tian nodded and thought, the Jili demonic territory is indeed an extraordinary territory. It is very different from the 9 territories. Then, Nie Tian looked around and observed the environment. He didn't find anything unusual. However, he felt that the humidity in the space seemed to be very high, giving off a misty feeling. "Everyone, please follow us." Mu Shi was very smart. She waited for Nie Tian and the others to get used to it before slowly speaking, preparing to leave this place. However, at this moment, a shrill and piercing cry suddenly came from high up in the sky. It seemed to come from some kind of large bird. Nie Tian and the others were stunned. Then, they all raised their heads and saw a large scarlet bird that was 1,000 meters long circling in the sky. It was like a blazing flame burning in the sky. And on the scarlet bird, several figures appeared, looking at Nie Tian and the others from afar. "Burning flame, they are from the fire elf race." Mu Tuo recognized the scarlet bird. It was called Burning Flame, and it was the common mount of the fire elf race. So, he immediately recognized that the people in the sky were from the fire elf race. The battle of the 9 races has not started yet. What are the fire elf race doing in our Greenwood Empire? Mu Shi frowned slightly and said with a displeased expression, "Ninth Princess, I heard that the wood elf race has always been at odds with the fire elf race. They won't come looking for trouble, will they?" Lai Yin Zhufeng frowned, as if worried about something. It's fine. Just ignore them, Mu Shi said coldly and prepared to leave with everyone. Oh whoa! But before she could finish speaking, the burning flame in the sky suddenly let out a strange cry. Then, it spat out a ball of flames that shot straight at Mu Shi and the others. Mu Shi frowned and hurriedly dodged. Nie Tian watched the ball of blazing flame fly past his eyes, and immediately felt a scorching aura that almost burned his skin. He hadn't expected the burning flame to be so strong. This kind of terrifying flame was enough to threaten a paramount god martial practitioner. But at this moment, the burning flame clearly didn't want to hurt them. It just wanted to stop them. Oh whoa! Then, the burning flame let out a long cry in the sky. Then, it flapped its wings and flew towards Nie Tian and the others. The huge burning flame floated in the sky. Its eyes were like flames as it stared at Nie Tian and the others, blocking their path. Nie Tian was even more shocked when he saw the huge bird called Burning Flame up close. The huge bird circled in the sky like a ball of burning flame. It seemed like even the sky was about to burn. Everyone felt extremely uncomfortable when they felt the powerful aura of the burning flame. It was as if they were in an endless sea of fire. This was especially true for Mu Shi, Mu Tuo, and Rui Qianyu. Large beads of sweat had already appeared on their foreheads. Mu Shi and Mu Tuo were members of the wood elf race. Their element was definitely wood, so they were naturally afraid of the scorching aura of the flames. Rui Qianyu was also a wood elemental cultivator, so the burning flame posed a great threat to her. Lai Yin Zhufeng was a fire elemental cultivator, so he didn't feel anything from the burning flame. Nie Tian and Song Lan could also deal with it easily. The burning flame posed no threat to them. At this moment, several figures stood on top of the burning flame. They were looking at Nie Tian and the others with mocking eyes. These figures had delicate and pretty appearances that were far more handsome than humans. They were similar in appearance to Mu Shi and Mu Tuo, but their hair was fiery red, their skin was also suffused with a scarlet-red luster, and even their eyes were fiery red, making them seem extremely strange. Bastard! Who are you? Don't you know who we are? How dare you block our way? Mu Tuo endured the pain of the flames and roared furiously. Your Highness, of course I know who you are. Otherwise, I wouldn't have blocked your way. The leader of the fire spirits was a slender man. He was more handsome than the rest, but there was a sinister look in his eyes. He smiled coldly and said, "Allow me to introduce myself. I am the 9th prince of the great Yen Empire, Yen Wuzuan." Yen Wuzuan. Mu Shi's deep blue eyes suddenly darkened when she heard Yen Wuzuan's words. Her delicate face suddenly stiffened. You're Yen Wuzuan." Mu Tuo's expression changed when he heard the name Yen Wuzuan. He actually cried out in shock. His expression became extremely terrified. The name Yen Wuzuan was very familiar to Mu Shi and Mu Tuo. It was like thunder piercing their ears. Yen Wuzuan was the 9th prince of the great Yen Empire. He was known as the most monstrous martial prodigy of the great Yen Empire's fire elves in tens of thousands of years. It was rumored that the emperor of the great Yen Empire viewed Yen Wuzuan as the hope of the empire's rise. He was even being groomed as the next emperor of the great Yen Empire. Chapter 2051. Nie Tian's expression changed slightly when he saw Mu Shi and Mu Tuo's reactions. It seemed that this guy called Yen Wuzuan had some strength. Judging from your reactions, it seems that you're familiar with me. Yen Wuzuan's gaze swept past Mu Shi and Mu Tuo before locking on to Mu Shi. He smiled faintly and said, "If I'm not wrong, you should be the 9th princess of the Greenwood Empire, Mu Shi, right? Yen Wuzuan, what do you want?" Mu Tuo could sense that Yen Wuzuan was up to no good, so he took a step forward and growled. Mu Shi extended her hand to stop Mu Tuo. She stared at Yen Wuzuan and said solemnly, "Yen Wuzuan, I am Mu Shi. If you have something to say, please say it. If there's nothing, then please step aside." "Princess Mu Shi, why are you in such a hurry? Yen Wuzuan smiled evilly and said, "Since I've stopped you, there's naturally something." Mu Shi clearly didn't want to get entangled with Yen Wuzuan and said coldly, "Princess Mu Shi, I heard that you're the most monstrous genius of the Greenwood Empire, and I'm also the most monstrous genius of the Great Yen Empire. Don't you think that we two monstrous geniuses are quite compatible?" Yen Wuzuan had a smile on his exquisite face, but his unfriendly gaze was constantly sizing up Mu Shi. Bastard! As soon as Yen Wuzuan's words fell, before Mu Shi could say anything, Mu Tuo, who was at the side, could not help but directly roar, "Yen Wuzuan, you are too shameless. My ninth sister is the most talented cultivator of our Greenwood imperial family, and she will become the Greenwood Emperor in the future. Who do you think you are to be compared to her? Impudent!" As soon as Mu Tuo finished speaking, Yen Wuzuan suddenly roared and moved. A terrifying flame aura emanated from his body and directly pressed towards Mu Tuo. Mu Tuo felt the terrifying aura pressing down on him. He couldn't help but move and was forced back again and again. He almost couldn't stand. Just at this moment, Mu Tuo suddenly felt a hand appear behind him. Immediately after, a powerful aura of life surged into his body, causing his flushed face to instantly return to normal. Mu Tuo suddenly turned around and saw the person standing behind him. It was none other than Nye Tian. Nye Tian smiled faintly and didn't say anything. Even though he couldn't bear the sight of Mu Tuo's arrogance, he was on the same side as Mu Tuo right now. So, he would still make a move when it was necessary. At that moment, Nye Tian finally understood why Mu Shi's status was so much higher than Mu Tuo's, even though they were brother and sister. It turned out that Mu Shi was the most monstrous genius of the Greenwood Empire, and was even the person who would become the Greenwood Emperor in the future. The truth was that Nye Tian was a bit confused. He could sense that Mu Shi was only a late paramount god, and although she was strong, she wasn't strong enough to stun him. As for Yen Wuzuan, the so-called top hellion of the Great Yen Empire, he was only a late paramount god. According to what the little fat cat said, the martial talent of the ancient era's elves greatly surpassed that of humans. In that case, wouldn't Mu Shi and Yen Wuzuan, the two most demon-level geniuses, be trash? Mu Tuo, are you alright? Mu Shi frowned and looked back at Mu Tuo. Mu Tuo shook his head. Yen Wuzuan, you're going too far. Mu Shi looked cold at Yen Wuzuan. What right does a piece of trash have to interrupt a conversation between two geniuses? Yen Wuzuan smiled sinisterly and disdainfully. Yen Wuzuan, who are you calling trash? Mu Tuo naturally could not tolerate being called trash right in front of his face. Yen Wuzuan's mouth twitched. Mu Tuo, someone left 2 sword scars on your face. That's the greatest humiliation between swordsmen. As a member of the Greenwood imperial family, you were humiliated like this. If you're not trash, then what are you? You. Mu Tuo felt his chest tighten when he heard Yen Wuzuan's words. It was as if he'd been smashed by a 1,000-kilogram boulder. He couldn't say anything, and coughed up a mouthful of blood. I just spoke the truth, and you coughed up blood. You're really trash. Yen Wuzuan smiled cold. He was extremely arrogant. Yen Wuzuan, that's enough. Mu Shi was also angry. She growled, what do you want? Just say it. Yen Wuzuan chuckled and said, Princess Mu Shi, I just said that we're a good match. That's why I came to the Greenwood Empire this time to propose marriage to you. Propose marriage? Mu Shi's eyes trembled when she heard that. Her delicate face instantly stiffened. She never expected that Yen Wuzuan wasn't joking. He was serious. However, in her opinion, Yen Wuzuan's proposal wasn't a proposal at all. He was forcing her to marry him. Everyone in the Jili Demon region knew that the Greenwood Empire and the Great Yen Empire were mortal enemies. The two empires were like fire and water. In the recent tens of thousands of years, the Greenwood Empire had become weaker and weaker, while the Great Yen Empire had become stronger and stronger. Yen Wuzuan, the 9th prince of the Great Yen Empire, proposed marriage to the 9th princess of the Greenwood Empire at this time. Wasn't this a blatant insult to the Greenwood Empire? Princess Mu Shi, what do you think? Yen Wuzuan asked with a cold smile when he saw Mu Shi's awkward reaction. Mu Shi was silent for a few seconds. Then, she said cold, "Not interested." At this moment she could only respond like this. The Great Yen Empire was strong. The Greenwood Empire was weak. It was unwise to directly counterattack now. Moreover, Mu Shi knew that she couldn't beat Yen Wuzuan with her current strength. The 5 great fairies were born from the 5 elements. They restrained each other. The fire fairies were the nemesis of the wood fairies. Generally speaking, if a wood fairy wanted to fight a fire fairy, they had to be at least a realm higher than the other party. Under the circumstances of the same realm, the fire fairies could completely crush the wood fairies. Princess Mu Shi, it's fine if you're not interested. Yen Wuzuan already knew that Mu Shi would have such a reaction. He smiled faintly and said, "What I care about is not you, but the Greenwood Empire. Actually, the reason I came to propose this time is to give the Greenwood Empire a chance to join the Fairy Alliance. Let the 5 great fairies form an alliance again. As long as we form an alliance, we can fight against the Demon Alliance. What do you think?" This time, Yen Wuzuan finally spoke his true thoughts. What he wanted was not Mu Shi, but the Greenwood Empire. Nie Tian's lips curled into a faint smile. He had already seen through Yen Wuzuan's ulterior motives. Mu Shi had previously said that there were 3 sides in the struggle of the 9 races. The Wood Fairies and the Ancient Ming were one side. The other 2 sides should be the Fairy Alliance and the Demon Alliance that Yen Wuzuan had mentioned. Yen Wuzuan wanted the Greenwood Empire to join the Fairy Alliance. In fact, he wanted the Greenwood Empire to submit to the Great Yen Empire. Sorry, the Greenwood Empire has our own allies. We don't need other allies. Mu Shi had already expected this. Therefore, her reaction was very calm. She said cold, "Allies." Yen Wuzuan let out a cold laugh. Finally, he laid his eyes on Ye Tian and the others. His eyes were filled with disdain as he said coldly, "The allies you mentioned are these pieces of trash from the Ancient Ming? Do you really think that a few Ancient Ming scum can turn the tables on your Greenwood Empire in the Battle of the 9 Clans? In your eyes they are allies, but in this king's eyes, they are just a bunch of ants. This king only needs to lift a finger to crush them all." At the end, Yen Wuzuan seemed very agitated. It seemed like he was really going to make a move. Chapter 2052. Lian Jiufeng had been watching the argument between Mu Shi and Yen Wuzuan from the side. He had no intention of interfering. But Yen Wuzuan was pointing right at his nose and calling the Ancient Ming trash an ant. That was something he couldn't tolerate. Lian Jiufeng's eyes were as dark as a frozen lake. He radiated a cold aura that made people shudder. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He had never seen Lian Jiufeng react like this before. His heart sank. He was worried that Lian Jiufeng would do something outrageous. "What? This king says that the Ancient Ming are trash. Do you have a problem with that?" Yen Wuzuan could feel the killing intent in Lian Jiufeng's eyes, but he didn't care. Instead, he grew even more arrogant. His eyes were filled with disdain and ridicule. But he remembered that this was the Greenwood Empire, so he didn't attack directly. "I have a problem, and a very big one at that," Lian Jiufeng said coldly, but he still managed to maintain a certain level of calmness. He said, "Yen Wuzuan, if you think that the Ancient Ming are all trash, why don't you show me just how strong the Fire Elf race is?" Yen Wuzuan laughed coldly. He looked at Lian Jiufeng playfully and said disdainfully, "You think you can fight this king with your strength? You don't dare?" Lian Jiufeng replied coldly. He was clearly trying to provoke Yen Wuzuan. "Calm down, Lian Jiufeng." Mu Shi spoke up. She didn't want to see Lian Jiufeng and Yen Wuzuan fight. To be honest, she didn't have much confidence in Lian Jiufeng's strength. Right now, Lian Jiufeng was only an early paramount god, while Yen Wuzuan was a late paramount god. He was also a freakishly talented genius, so his battle prowess was likely on par with a peak paramount god. Even if Lai Yen Jiufeng was an ancient Ming, he wasn't a match for Yen Wuzuan. This king doesn't dare? Yen Wuzuan couldn't help but laugh at Lai Yen Jiufeng's provocation. He said coldly, "The ancient Ming was strong for a time, and you were the leader of the 9 ancient races for a very long time. But that was in the past. The ancient Ming is no longer as glorious as they once were. After the death of the underworld emperor, your ancient Ming tribe became the weakest of the 9 ancient clans. If it wasn't for the fact that the Wood Elf tribe still remembers you every year, you wouldn't even have the right to participate in the 9 ancient clans battle royale. You want to challenge this king with your current strength? You're simply courting death." Yen Wuzuan's words were sharp and pierced Lai Yen Jiufeng's heart like a sharp blade. Lai Yen Jiufeng knew that Yen Wuzuan's words were very arrogant, but they were all true. The once flourishing ancient Ming race had indeed become the weakest of the 9 ancient races. Fortunately, the Wood Elves had persisted every time. Otherwise, there would have been no place for the ancient Ming race in the struggle of the 9 races. Be it Lai Yen Jiufeng, Heaven Chief or Earth Chief, everything they did was to revive the Netherworld Emperor and return the ancient Ming race to its peak. Lai Yen Jiufeng believed that the ancient Ming race would conquer the 9 realms and the Jili Demon realm as long as the Nether Emperor was resurrected. The Nether Emperor's strength was not something these current martial practitioners could imagine. At this time, Mu Shi wanted to persuade Lai Yen Jiufeng, but the latter stopped her. Lai Yen Jiufeng looked cold at Yen Wuzuan and said 2 words in a cold voice, "You're courting death." Yen Wuzuan was stunned. He clearly hadn't expected Lai Yen Jiufeng to be so stubborn. "Since you're so stubborn, then don't blame this king for being cruel." Yen Wuzuan smiled cold and looked at the 2 male fire elves behind him. He said to one of them, "Huoli, you do it. Don't hold back. Kill him, and this king will reward you." "Yes," the man called Huoli answered. Although he took a step forward, he stared at Lai Yen Jiufeng with scarlet eyes and chuckled. "Ancient Ming trash, you don't have the right to make His Highness the 9th Prince take action. I, Huoli, am enough to kill you." It was clear that Yen Wuzuan looked down on Lai Yen Jiufeng. He didn't even have the desire to kill Lai Yen Jiufeng himself. "Is that so?" The corner of Lai Yen Jiufeng's mouth twitched. He took a step back and said, "Kill him, Song Lan." "Amen." Song Lan nodded solemnly. He took a step forward and the sword aura around him suddenly erupted. Suddenly, a mighty sword pressure spread out and formed a terrifying pressure in the air. Nie Tian's brows furrowed slightly, and he directly pulled Raindrop and Qianye and retreated far away. He knew how strong Song Lan was, so he didn't want to get caught up in the battle. Yen Wuzuan and Lai Yen Jiufeng were a little interesting. They didn't want to take action themselves, but let the people around them do it. Song Lan was a late paramount god. Others might think that he was far stronger than Lai Yen Jiufeng. But Nie Tian knew that Lai Yen Jiufeng's strength couldn't be judged by his cultivation. He also thought that Lai Yen Jiufeng was definitely stronger than Song Lan. "Coward!" As expected, the fire elf called Huoli couldn't help but mock Lai Yen Jiufeng when he saw that Lai Yen Jiufeng had sent Song Lan instead of him. He assumed that Lai Yen Jiufeng was afraid of him, and that was why he was sending Song Lan. But the truth was that Lai Yen Jiufeng didn't want to fight. "I'll kill you with one sword," Song Lan said coldly, unleashing a terrifying sword intent. If Lai Yen Jiufeng wanted him to kill him, how could he refuse? "How arrogant!" Huoli roared in anger. His body trembled and a scarlet flame ignited around his body. It filled the air and the space within a few thousand meters turned into a furnace. Flashy but impractical. "You will die for sure after the blue wave soared," Nie Tian murmured with a smile as he watched from afar. Huoli was a mid-paramount god, which wasn't bad. Unfortunately for him, he was facing sagely sword Song Lan. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that sagely sword Song Lan was a first-rate swordsman among the 9 realms. If Nye Tian hadn't appeared in the evil edge sword discourse, he would have been the sword chief. Die! Song Lan roared. He didn't even look at Huoli. He directly slashed out with his sword. Suddenly, a golden sword light appeared. It was like a golden waterfall. It carried an incomparably violent sword will and crazily pressed towards Huoli. At the same time, the flames around Huoli's body seemed to have gone berserk. They turned into a ferocious flaming beast and rushed over. Rumble! High up in the sky, the golden sword image and the huge flame beast collided. A loud explosion sounded, and the huge flame beast was directly shattered. The golden sword image was like a rainbow, and it directly attacked Huoli. Bang! In the next moment, the sword shadow descended. Huoli didn't even have time to let out a final scream before he was directly submerged by the sword shadow, turning into a bloody light in the air. Chapter 2053. High up in the sky, the sudden bloody scene made everyone's eyes widen. The scene fell into a dead silence. At this time, even Nye Tian was stunned, his eyes filled with disbelief. He knew that Song Lan's sword was enough to kill Huoli, but he didn't expect it to be so simple. Nye Tian was a little skeptical. Was Song Lan's battle strength really that terrifying? He couldn't even believe that he had defeated such a powerful opponent in the evil edge sword competition. He always felt that Song Lan's sword will was a little strange, especially when facing him. It seemed to be inexplicably weak. However, when Song Lan faced other people, his terrifying sword intent was displayed to the fullest. Just like now when he killed Huoli, it was enough to shock everyone present. Warriors of the fire spirit race are a mess, Song Lan said loudly with a cold smile on his face after killing Huoli. His arrogant voice fell into Yen Wuzuan's ears, and it was extremely unpleasant. Yen Wuzuan's crimson eyes trembled. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He had never thought that Song Lan could be so powerful. At this time, Mu Shi was also stunned, her deep blue eyes staring at Song Lan. She was shocked. 8th brother. The scene was dead silent for a few seconds, then a sorrowful howl sounded. The other male fire spirit behind Yen Wuzuan rushed over, his eyes locked on Song Lan, and he roared in anger, "Bastard, you killed my 8th brother, I want your life." So the person who had just died was his brother, no wonder he was so angry. This person was even stronger than Huoli, he was a late-stage paramount god. You want to die too? Song Lan looked at the figure, his eyes cold and emotionless. Pay for my 8th brother's life. The fire spirit didn't care at all. He rushed over. His whole body turned into a ball of crimson flame, like a burning meteorite, smashing towards Song Lan. You're courting death. Song Lan let out a low roar and attacked with his saint's sword once again. A terrifying sword slashed downwards, an endless sword intent gushed out. Suddenly, a sword shadow fell down like a mountain. This sword was even more terrifying than the previous one. Even if the male fire elf was stronger than Huoli, he would definitely not be able to withstand such a terrifying sword. His outcome would be the same as his 8th brother's, a tragic death on the spot. Bastard! Just as Song Lan made his move, a terrifying roar sounded from the other side. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he realized that it was Yen Wuzuan who had moved. In midair, Yen Wuzuan slapped out with his palm. Instantly, a terrifying flame blade appeared. Its speed was extremely fast, and a blazing aura filled the entire space as it slashed towards Song Lan. Yen Wuzuan's strength was indeed extraordinary. One could tell with a single move that he was far stronger than the other two from before. Song Lan had already made his move and was unable to defend himself. If he was hit by Yen Wuzuan head-on, even if he did not die, he would be gravely injured. Yen Wuzuan was truly despicable and shameless. Every day, he flaunted that he was the #1 monstrous martial artist of the fire elf race, but in the end, he resorted to sneak attacks. Since you've made your move, you're courting death. At the same time, Lai Yin Jiufeng, who had been watching coldly from the sidelines, moved his lips and moved as well. He slapped out with his palm, and a terrifying palm shadow appeared in the air. It was vast and powerful, and it pressed down on Yen Wuzuan. It had to be said that Yen Wuzuan was shameless, but Lai Yin Jiufeng was even more shameless. Lai Yin Jiufeng seemed to have known that Yen Wuzuan would make his move, so he had been waiting for the right opportunity. If Yen Wuzuan dared to make a move against Song Lan, he would kill him. Everything happened in an instant. Song Lan, Yen Wuzuan, and Lai Yin Jiufeng attacked at almost the same time. If the three of them attacked at the same time, the final result would be the death of the male fire elf, the death of Song Lan, and the death of Yen Wuzuan. The final victor would be Lai Yin Jiufeng. Mu Shi watched from the sidelines. She was stunned at first, but she soon reacted. Her expression changed drastically, and she looked terrified. She did not hesitate at all. Her aura instantly skyrocketed, and she slapped out with her palm. A ball of green light appeared in the air and turned into a shield that enveloped Yen Wuzuan. Mu Shi was trying to save Yen Wuzuan. Save me! On the other side, Song Lan suddenly felt a scorching aura pressing down on his head. He looked up and saw a flaming blade coming at him. His face immediately paled, and he cried out in shock. But the moment the flaming blade fell, a starlight shield appeared around Song Lan's body and enveloped him. Bang! As the flaming blades fell, the starlight shield immediately shattered. Song Lan's figure was sent flying. While he was still in the air, he felt a soft force appear and lift him up. Song Lan frowned, and when he turned around and saw Nye Tian, he immediately understood everything. He never thought that the person who saved him at the most critical moment would be Nye Tian. Song Lan, are you all right? Nye Tian moved and appeared beside Song Lan. He immediately let out a sigh of relief when he sensed that the latter's aura was weak, but it was still stable. Yen Wuzuan's palm strike was terrifying. Fortunately, Nye Tian had acted in time and protected Song Lan with the Star Soul Shield. But even so, Song Lan's injuries were not light. If Nye Tian had not acted just now, Song Lan would probably be dead by now. Although there was some enmity between Nye Tian and Song Lan, he remembered that the two of them were now on the same side. Of course, he had to save him. Ah! And at this moment, a shrill scream came from the sky. Yen Wuzuan's figure was sent flying, leaving a bloody trail in the air. When Mu Shi saw this, her figure flashed, and like a green bolt of lightning, she directly caught Yen Wuzuan. Yen Wuzuan! Mu Shi cried out nervously after catching Yen Wuzuan. Only when she sensed that the latter's aura was still there did her tensed face relax a little. The scene just now was too thrilling. If Mu Shi had acted a little later, Yen Wuzuan would have died without a doubt. Mu Tuo was stunned watching from the side. He did not expect that in the blink of an eye, almost everyone present had acted. The male fire elf was killed by Song Lan, but Song Lan and Yen Wuzuan were saved by Nye Tian and Mu Shi respectively. Nye Tian saved Song Lan because the latter was his teammate. But why did Mu Shi save Yen Wuzuan? Weren't the Greenwood Empire and the Great Yen Empire irreconcilable enemies? Moreover, Yen Wuzuan had humiliated Mu Shi many times. Mu Shi saving Yen Wuzuan might seem strange, but it was easy to understand with a little thought. Yen Wuzuan's status was too high. He could not die in the Greenwood Empire. If Yen Wuzuan died in the Greenwood Empire, it would be equivalent to giving the Great Yen Empire a reason to declare war. At that time, the two empires would definitely fight to the death. The Greenwood Empire was so weak now. Once they declared war with the Great Yen Empire, what awaited them was the destruction of their empire. Chapter 2054. Yen Wuzuan was saved by Mu Shi. Although he did not die, he was gravely injured. He was on the verge of death right now, and even speaking was difficult. Not dead. Lai Yin Jiufeng glanced at Yen Wuzuan indifferently and shook his head slightly. He smiled. It seems that the ninth prince of the great Yin Empire is quite lucky. Lai Yin Jiufeng was very calm right now. It was as if the person he had just killed was not Yen Wuzuan, but an insignificant passerby. Indeed, in his eyes, there was no need for Yen Wuzuan to exist at all. But since Mu Shi had saved Yen Wuzuan, Lai Yin Jiufeng was not in the mood to fight again. Lai Yin Jiufeng, have you gone mad? Mu Shi abruptly raised her head to look at Lai Yin Jiufeng and scolded him angrily. Lai Yin Jiufeng was a smart person. How could he not know the consequences of killing Yen Wuzuan? He was basically sending the Greenwood Empire to their deaths. Ninth Princess, don't be so angry. Isn't that idiot still alive? Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly. He looked completely at ease. Bastard! Mu Shi could only curse angrily when she saw Lai Yin Jiufeng's reaction. She said nothing else. Nie Tian looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng and sneered inside. Lai Yin Jiufeng, you are truly vicious. You didn't just attack to kill Yen Wuzuan. You probably wanted to start a war between the two great empires. With Nie Tian's understanding of Lai Yin Jiufeng, the latter was not the kind of person who acted on impulse. Therefore, Lai Yin Jiufeng definitely had other intentions when he killed Yen Wuzuan. To kill Yen Wuzuan, Lai Yin Jiufeng was willing to disregard Song Lan. He was truly vicious. Seeing that Song Lan was fine, Nie Tian moved next to Lai Yin Jiufeng and whispered, "Why did you do this, Lai Yin Jiufeng? Why did you kill Yen Wuzuan?" Lai Yin Jiufeng was surprised for a moment before he smiled. He insulted the ancient Ming. Does he not deserve to die? Lai Yin Jiufeng, don't play dumb. You know what I want to ask, don't you? Nie Tian didn't want to waste words with Lai Yin Jiufeng. Lai Yin Jiufeng turned to look at Nie Tian with a strange smile on his face. He said in a low voice, "The ancient Ming race needs a loyal ally. The great Yen Empire is trying to rope in the Greenwood Empire. Shouldn't I do something?" Nie Tian's eyes focused on Lai Yin Jiufeng. He actually couldn't say anything for a time. As it turned out, Lai Yin Jiufeng had killed Yen Wuzuan to completely sever any hope of the great Yen Empire and the Greenwood Empire forming an alliance. He definitely knew that once Yen Wuzuan died, the two empires would definitely go to war. At that time, who knew how many people would die? The fact that Lai Yin Jiufeng was willing to do such a thing to obtain a loyal ally showed just how ruthless he was. By now, Yen Wuzuan had recovered a little and was barely able to stand up. He stared at Lai Yin Jiufeng in fear and trepidation as he said in a trembling voice, "Why you actually dared to kill this king?" He didn't think that Lai Yin Jiufeng would be so bold as to actually try to kill him. "So what if I kill you? In my opinion, you are just an ant of the fire spirit race. I can crush you whenever I want," Lai Yin Jiufeng sneered. He didn't care about Yen Wuzuan's identity at all. Yen Wuzuan seemed to have said the same thing earlier, so it was even more provocative and sarcastic when Lai Yin Jiufeng said it. "Lai Yin Jiufeng, you madman!" Mu Shi cursed in her heart as she looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng from afar. If Lai Yin Jiufeng wasn't an ancient Ming, she would have killed him with her own hands. "Ancient Ming brat, you sure talk big." At this moment, a low voice boomed out from the void as a figure appeared beside Yen Wuzuan. Nie Tian and the others looked at the person. It was a male fire spirit. He looked similar to Yen Wuzuan, but he was a little older. Second uncle. Yen Wuzuan's eyes sparkled when he saw the person who had appeared. He called out excitedly. The person who had appeared was none other than Yen Wuzuan's second uncle, Yen Zongyi. Yen Zongyi was the leader of the great Yen Empire's visit to the Greenwood Empire. Yen Zongyi's expression clearly darkened when he saw Yen Wuzuan injured, but he didn't do anything. "Mu Shi, what happened here?" In the next moment, another voice resounded, and then a green-clothed figure appeared and descended by Mu Shi's side. "Father," Mu Shi hurriedly bowed and called out respectfully when she saw this person. Nie Tian's eyes focused when he heard Mu Shi address the figure in green. He looked over and thought, no wonder Yen Wuzuan's second uncle didn't do anything. The Emperor of the Greenwood Empire is here as well. Yen Zongyi was suppressing his anger because he was wary of the Green Wood Emperor. Otherwise, he would have killed Lai Yen Jiufeng and the others. Mu Shi, why is Great Yan's 9th prince injured? The Green Wood Emperor, Mu Xiangshan, glanced at Yen Wuzuan cold and asked. Mu Shi didn't dare to hide anything. She recounted what had happened before and said in the end, Lai Yen Jiufeng attacked because he was angered by Yen Wuzuan. Fortunately, nothing major happened. Yen Wuzuan is still alive. Nonsense. Yen Wuzuan couldn't hold back anymore after Mu Shi finished. He roared angrily, What do you mean nothing major happened? Does it have to be my death for it to be a major matter? Mu Xiangshan, let me tell you, you must give me an explanation for what happened today. Otherwise, I will not let this matter rest. Yen Wuzuan was extremely arrogant. He actually called the Greenwood Emperor by his name in front of so many people. Mu Xiangshan's expression darkened when a junior yelled at him. He raised an eyebrow and said solemnly, Yen Wuzuan, what kind of explanation do you want me to give you? Humph. Yen Wuzuan sneered and pointed at Lai Yen Jiufeng. It's very simple. Kill him. Lai Yen Jiufeng couldn't help but look at Yen Wuzuan when he heard him. He looked like he was looking at an idiot. Mu Xiangshan's expression darkened as well. He was extremely embarrassed and didn't say anything for a long time. Mu Xiangshan, are you unwilling? Yen Wuzuan thought that Mu Xiangshan was hesitating. He couldn't help but sneer and urge him arrogantly. Stop shouting nonsense. Lai Yen Jiufeng couldn't bear to watch any longer. He laughed and said, Yen Wuzuan, I can tell you clearly that if the Greenwood Emperor had to choose between you and me, he would only choose me. He would never choose you. If you continue shouting like an idiot, you might anger him and the one who dies will be you. Bullshit. Yen Wuzuan roared angrily. He was extremely arrogant. He shouted loudly, I don't believe that Mu Xiangshan would be so bold as to kill a prince of the great Yen Empire. Chapter 2055. Mu Xiangshan's voice was deep and forceful. It contained a strong oppressive aura. At the same time, undisguised killing intent surged in his eyes. Yen Wuzuan could feel the killing intent in Mu Xiangshan's eyes. His eyes shook and his face paled. He could feel that Mu Xiangshan was not bluffing. He really wanted to kill. Yen Wuzuan calmed down and gulped. His entire person was like a frosted eggplant. He was completely withered and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Emperor Greenwood, do you really want to fall out with the great Yen Empire? Yen Zongyi spoke at this time with a puzzled expression. Yen Zongyi, go back and tell your royal brother that the Greenwood Empire has never submitted to the great Yen Empire in the past. It won't be now, and it won't be in the future. If he still covets the Greenwood Empire, then tell him to come personally. I, Mu Xiangshan, will wait for him. Mu Xiangshan looked back at Yen Zongyi and said coldly. Yen Zongyi frowned and his expression immediately became ugly. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he did not. He only said to Yen Wuzuan, 9th Prince, let's go. Yen Zongyi and Yen Wuzuan did not linger. They immediately left and disappeared. Lai Yen Jiufeng looked in the direction they disappeared and could not help but laugh. He said, Emperor Greenwood, if I knew you were so determined, I would not have let that idiot 9th Prince leave alive no matter what. It is a pity to let them leave just like that. Your Highness, sorry to have startled you. Mu Xiangshan smiled slightly and then did something unexpected. He bowed deeply towards Lai Yen Jiufeng and said very respectfully, Royal Father, you. Mu Shi saw Mu Xiangshan's action and her expression froze. She was immediately speechless. Nie Tian was also stunned. He did not think that Mu Xiangshan would be so respectful towards Lai Yen Jiufeng. Mu Xiangshan was the king of the Wood Elves, the ruler of a nation, the lord of a race. With his status, why would he be so respectful towards Lai Yen Jiufeng? Nie Tian already knew that the Wood Elf race and the ancient Ming race were both part of the 9 ancient clans. The ancient Ming race used to be the strongest among the 9 ancient clans. However, it had now become the weakest. Since the ancient Ming had been reduced to the bottom of the 9 ancient races, why was Mu Xiangshan so respectful towards Lai Yin Jiufeng? Judging from his attitude, it was clear that he was subservient. Mu Xiangshan's actions were too strange. Nie Tian couldn't understand them. Moreover, Lai Yin Jiufeng's words were very strange. He seemed to be completely confident that Mu Xiangshan would stand firmly on the ancient Ming race's side. This made Nie Tian very puzzled. Emperor Greenwood, you really are a smart person. You can see what will happen in the future. I like dealing with smart people the most. I hope our ancient Ming race and the Wood Elves can cooperate happily. Lai Yin Jiufeng did not find Mu Xiangshan's actions strange. Instead, he calmly accepted it and smiled. Mu Xiangshan nodded heavily and said, "Don't worry, Your Highness. The Wood Elf race will always be the ancient Ming race's most loyal ally." "That's good." Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly and said, "Emperor Greenwood, let's go." "Please, Your Highness." Mu Xiangshan bowed slightly and allowed Lai Yin Jiufeng to walk in front. Lai Yin Jiufeng did not stand on ceremony. He swaggered to the front and looked very satisfied. Mu Xiangshan followed behind Lai Yin Jiufeng. It was only now that he began to examine Nie Tian's group. When he saw Nie Tian, his expression clearly froze. He seemed to have discovered something, but he didn't say anything. Nie Tian frowned and thought, this Wood Elf King is not simple. His senses are very strong. He seems to have discovered something. Nie Tian was a person with very strong senses, so he could sense that Mu Xiangshan was also a very perceptive martial practitioner. Mu Xiangshan had clearly discovered something on Nie Tian, but he didn't say it out loud. After that, the group quickly arrived at Greenwood Imperial City. Nie Tian discovered that the Elven Imperial City was very different from the human cities. It looked more like an ancient tribe. The houses were built against the mountains. They looked simple, but they were very sturdy. Mu Xiangshan directly led the group into the Imperial Palace. Inside the Imperial Palace, it finally looked like a palace. Soon, the group arrived at the Great Hall of the Imperial Palace. Mu Xiangshan let Lai Yin Jiufeng and the others sit down. He didn't sit on the throne himself. Instead, he chose to sit opposite Lai Yin Jiufeng. "Your Highness, I really didn't think that you would personally participate in the tournament of the 9 races." Mu Xiangshan smiled and said to Lai Yin Jiufeng, "I also didn't think that you would be able to see through my identity with a single glance." Lai Yin Jiufeng also smiled and said indifferently, "Your Highness, you must be joking. If I couldn't even recognize you, how would I be qualified to be the Wood Elf King?" Mu Xiangshan smiled apologetically. Then, he looked at Nie Tian and the others and said, "Your Highness, everyone participating in the tournament of the 9 races is really not simple." "Oh." Lai Yin Jiufeng raised an eyebrow and took a sip of tea. Then, he said, "Emperor Greenwood, why don't you tell me why they are not simple?" Mu Xiangshan was taken aback. He clearly hadn't expected Lai Yin Jiufeng to say such a thing. He hesitated for a moment, then looked at Song Lan and said, "This swordsman is so young, but he's already a late paramount god. And get to the point." Lai Yin Jiufeng didn't wait for Mu Xiangshan to finish and interrupted him. Mu Xi was a little unhappy. She felt that Lai Yin Jiufeng was being too arrogant. But Mu Xiangshan didn't think much of it. Instead, he bowed and said with a smile, "Your Highness, if I'm not mistaken, this swordsman has the acquired 3 lives meridians. No wonder he can control the sacred sword." The acquired 3 lives meridians? Nie Tian was stunned when he heard this. He couldn't help but look at Song Lan. The person Mu Xiangshan was talking about was Song Lan. But Nie Tian didn't understand. What did Mu Xiangshan mean by the acquired 3 lives meridians? Emperor Greenwood has a good eye. Lai Yin Jiufeng smiled faintly, but didn't continue. Instead, he pointed at Rui Qianyu and said, "Emperor Greenwood, look at this girl. How strong is she?" Mu Xiangshan furrowed his brows. He looked at Raindrop Qianye and said, Your Highness, this young lady possesses the 9 color pupils, the 7th special pupil. Moreover, all 9 of her pupils have been opened. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he heard Mu Xiangshan's words. He was quite surprised. Mu Xiangshan's perception was very strong. He could see so many things about Rui Qianyu with just a glance. What else? Lai Yin Zhufeng smiled and asked. Mu Xiangshan's eyes flashed. He hesitated for a moment, but he still said, I can feel that this girl has just fused with a martial inheritance with a very strong killing aura. If I'm not wrong, this martial inheritance should be at the sage level.